It's the democracy, stupid.
A set of conversations about our government, our politics, and the kind of country we aspire to be.
And now, here's your host, Edwin Eisendrath, on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
All right, everybody, happy Saturday. We have a lot to get to today. And if you're listening in Chicago, I just want to say one thing first before anything else. Go Bears. Big game tomorrow. All right, but that's tomorrow. Monday will mark a full month that the Trump administration, that Donald Trump and Pam Bondi have violated the law Trump signed to release all the Epstein files. And I say that because it's hard to remember, because in order to change the subject, the president is doing crazy, desperate, and dangerous things. You know, this morning or last night, he announced tariffs on all our allies in Europe. Why? Because they're not giving him Greenland. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? We're going to blow up the NATO alliance, create a Western front so that Europe can't pay attention to Ukraine. Putin is happy about that. All because this probable child molester, certainly a sex offender, certainly a fraudster in the White House, wants to change the subject. And his cruelty knows no end. Look, almost 4 million Americans live in the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area, and they're under siege. They are under siege. If a foreign government did this, it would be an act of war, not just against the folks in Minneapolis, but against all of the American people. And when our own government does it, you know what? It's still an act of war against the American people. Let's be clear. None of what we're seeing ICE doing, not the murder of Renee Good, not throwing tear gas canisters into moving cars with children inside, not storming high schools and wrestling teachers to the ground, not tackling journalists, not any of it is necessary to find, arrest, and deport violent criminals. But that's not what this is about. They are liars. All of this is about coercion and intimidation. And when local elected leaders in anguish speak out, even when they call for calm, as Governor Walz did, well, and Mayor Jacob Frey did, what does Donald Trump do? He instructs his crooked government to indict them. This isn't politics. This isn't democracy. It is a lawless power and a corrupt dictator we are looking at. And the response of the Patriots in Minnesota, it is inspiring. I mean, just as we saw here in Chicago, people are out and they are in organized and in spontaneous protests, people are showing up. They're protecting each other. They're documenting the horrors. They're making sure people know their rights. They are litigating, and they are doing it all peacefully. Now, here's the thing. I'm in the business of talking to you about the news, but let me comment on other people who are for a minute, because the response of some pundits is to blame the Democratic Party for all of this. Seriously, you cannot get through a day without seeing headlines like, Democrats will lose unless they fill in the blank, or Democrats must face reality, or Democrats must address the real reason why. I'm sorry, Democrats might lose. All of America will lose. We'll lose everything. So I am done listening to pundits and consultants and influencers tell us what Democrats must do, as if the attack on American democracy and freedom is a problem the Democratic Party must solve. I mean, those who see this moment as a battle between Democrat and Republican parties see nothing. They see nothing at all. Look, this big question facing us today is whether we should remain a democracy governed by the rule of law, and that is not a partisan fight. Our political parties, let's just remember this, they're organized, in fact, to fight policy battles in a democracy. Who should bear the burden of taxes? How should we incentivize entrepreneurship? How will we help those in need? How much should we spend on our military? But these are important questions. But today we're fighting just to be able to argue about those important questions. This isn't a partisan fight. What happened on the streets in Minneapolis, like what's happened here in Chicago, it's not about Democrats versus Republicans. Are you crazy? In those cities, as in Los Angeles and Charlotte, armed agents are attacking Americans for speaking out. And in response, more Americans are joining the protests. Thank goodness for Americans. But you know, those Americans aren't pouring out onto the streets to argue about politics. They're showing up to protect their neighbors and to assert the rights of all Americans. The No Kings rallies, many of you went to them. They weren't Democratic Party events. I stood with 2 Republicans at the last rally. Then we were 10 feet away from a group carrying a banner that proudly announced they were the Communist Party of America. Many people came who said they weren't political at all, and No Kings was a planned rally. The folks showing up spontaneously in cities across America, they aren't showing up for politics. They're showing up for America. Reporters and pundits who think this is a partisan fight, blind, dangerously blind. If they opened their eyes just a bit, they would see what the rest of us see. Not a fight between Democrats and Republicans, but a battle between America and MAGA, between democracy and autocracy, between freedom and coercion. And look, a little background, right? Courtesy of a supine Congress and a Supreme Court that legitimized this fringe idea of the unitary executive, the executive branch of our government now belongs entirely to Donald Trump. He alone commands every employee, sets every policy, launches every initiative. And he's opted to use that power in defiance of law, knowing that the judicial branch is a slower one, unable to stop him until long after he's acted. The horrendous decision in the United States versus Donald Trump, I can barely speak about without my own contempt at this Supreme Court showing. Their decision in that case gave presidents immunity from prosecution, and Trump has used his pardon power to extend that immunity to anyone who breaks the law in his name. Thus empowered and unconstrained, Trump has styled himself our monarch. Now, he's gone further, corrupting our military, an institution Americans pay for, serve in, and support in every way to protect us. And Trump says that institution must follow his orders rather than the law. Well, actually, that's not right. He says his orders are the law. And so he fired the military lawyers who would say otherwise. Those JAG officers, gone. And he changed the military's mission from defense to war, and he's used that war power to go after countries, even without consultation, forget consent, not even consultation with Congress, to crown himself Emperor of the Americas. Now he threatens a NATO country, and this morning put tariffs on all our allies in order to bend them. And you know what? He will fail, and we will all be hurting for it. He is making us less safe. These economic policies are making us less well off. And what he's doing in Minnesota. When one of his agents murdered Renee Good in Minnesota, a woman whose last words were, "I am not mad at you," murdered in cold blood, Donald Trump tasked the entire power of the executive government not with finding justice, but with tarnishing her name. Remember, for Trump, Ashley Babbitt, the insurrectionist who died trying violently to overturn his loss in 2020, is a hero, while Renee Good, the mom who dared to protest the violent tactics of ICE, is their villain. These people are upside down. They're crazy. In Trump's nation, politics doesn't exist. It's a thing of the past. Dissent is illegal. Obedience is the rule. Look, to my friends in the punditry, Americans are not outsourcing the defense of our democracy to the Democratic Party or to anyone. And pundits who suggest we do are foolish, dangerous, lazy. Anyone waiting for Chuck Schumer to save the country is an idiot. Not because Chuck's a bad guy, but because Chuck's not the guy whose job it is to save the country. It's our job. I mean, even if the leadership of the Democratic Party were the wisest and bravest amongst us, those who lay the responsibility for saving America at the foot of any political party are ducking their own responsibility as citizens. My gosh. And you know what? Americans aren't doing that. They are showing up. They are stepping out. They are taking photographs and holding these people accountable. They are saying as loudly as they can, Greenland, are you kidding me? And they're saying a president who wants to take health care from 14 million Americans, as they did in the big, beautiful bill, raise the price of health care on every one of us in order to fund more ICE officers, that is unacceptable. And there's something we can do about it. There is something we can do about it. And I'll talk about that with folks today. I have great guests, starting with, a woman who actually is a journalist who got an offer letter to go work at ICE. And wow, does that show something about their crazy vetting methods, how dangerous this is. We're going to talk to her as soon as we come back. All right, everybody, I got a treat for you. Laura Jadid is a freelance journalist and a writer at firewalledmedia.com. She's written about conservative and far-right movements, and her work shows up, in places like The New Republic, Rolling Stone, and Politico. She is also a vet who served 2 tours in Afghanistan. Look, she writes powerfully, with a sense of urgency and a bit of humor. I think you'll like her writing. She joins us now in what I gotta say is a bit of a media explosion because of something that she wrote recently. So, Laura, welcome.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Yep. I'm probably like the 800th interview you've done this week. And I'm pleased to be part of this tour of yours.
This has without a doubt been the most crazy 3 days of my entire journalism career. It's quite something.
Well, I want to talk to you about what I'm going to call your ice-capade. But first, could you tell everybody a little bit about you? Because your own history is fascinating.
Yeah. So I am. You did a pretty good job summing it up, I think. I joined the military right out of high school. I really thought the war on terror was a great thing at the time. This was 2005. I really believe you were bringing freedom and democracy to people who wanted it. And then when I got over there, when I deployed to Afghanistan, it became obvious very quickly that that was not the case, that I'd been lied to pretty severely. It made me wonder what else I'd been lied to about. And over the next several years, I changed a lot of what I believed. I've been a journalist for about 5 years now. A lot of what I do is informed by being able to, I remember very clearly believing something that I no longer do. And I know that people mostly people think they're doing the right thing. And I try very hard to convey what people really believe and then why if I think they're wrong, why that is. So this is an unusual piece for me. The ICE piece in some ways is not my usual thing.
Okay. That's right. I mean, I've read a bunch of your stuff now, and it definitely stands out. But it met the moment. So why don't you tell people about it? Just if you don't mind. I know you've said it a bunch of times, but tell everybody what you did.
Yeah, absolutely. So this started out, it was supposed to be a short article for Slate about an ICE hiring event out in Arlington, Texas. It was a 2-day expo. On-the-spot hiring was advertised. You could go in, submit your application, get screened, and then walk out, theoretically, with an offer for a job at ICE. So I put together a skills-based resume that was 100% accurate, that at first glance looks pretty good. And I assumed that I would get through the first round because, again, the essay, the resume looks pretty good. And then they would run any kind of check on me, type my name into any kind of computer, and realize very quickly that I am stridently against what ICE is doing, and I am very opposed to the Trump administration in almost every regard. I'm a very Googleable person. My name is extremely unique. That is how far I expected this to go. So I went in, not very crowded, considering the large arena they'd rented, did about a 6-minute interview that involved very basic questions like name, date of birth, time of service in the military, choice of home base, and that was it. I did talk to an ICE officer after that, but that was not part of the interview process. That was just something that we could do if we were curious about the job. So I did that. I hung out, took some notes, and then I left, and I assumed that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. For the first few days, I kept an eye out for a follow-up email, which they told me I might receive after they processed the application. It might not be the same day, they said. It might take a couple of days. So I kept an eye out, but then I got lax, and my inbox is a bit of a disaster, I'll confess it. So when they did send a tentative offer letter about 7 days later, I missed it. It went to the bottom of my inbox and might have stayed there forever, if not for what happened next. This tentative offer included, basically it said I needed to respond within 48 hours to indicate my interest, at which point I would need to submit a bunch of paperwork, which they sent me. Stuff like a medical exam, stuff like an affidavit that I've never been convicted of domestic violence, basic background check information, stuff like that. All very normal stuff. I never responded to it because I didn't see it. And that really should be where this story ends. But about a couple weeks later, I got an email that I did receive, that I did see, saying that I should go into LabCorp and take a drug test to go to the next portion, the next section of my ICE application to proceed to the next step. And this was unfortunate timing. Cannabis is legal in New York. I'd partaken about 6 days before the test date, but you know, why not? I decided to do it. You never know what's going to happen. Worst case scenario, I waste some of ICE's budget. So I went in, I took the test, and then I waited to hear back. And at this point, I did expect to hear back because when you fail a drug test, they are supposed to call you. So I waited, I didn't hear back. And it occurred to me about 9 days later, I could just log into the ICE portal, the USA Jobs, and then go to ICE and see how my application is doing, which I did. And what I saw, and I have a video, a screen capture of this posted online on both X and Blue Sky.
We'll get to that in a second. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Yes. But it basically, this portal it said that I had a final offer. It said that I had accepted the final offer, and that I had an entry on duty date, EOD, of September 30th. I was looking at this on October 3rd. So I had apparently been entered into ICE for 3 days and had no idea. I did not accept a final offer. I did not receive a final offer. I went to the portion of the application where you would expect them to talk about what paperwork you have and haven't done. And it listed my medical exam as complete as of October 6th, so 3 days in the future, and also my background check as complete 3 days in the future. To me, this is a bit distressing.
Right. So they said, so you passed the drug test despite cannabis.
Well, it just said initiated. It actually didn't have a result. I never did get the result of that drug test.
But
so I don't
they
know.
made an offer regardless.
Yes.
And you know, your resume said Reed College. That would have been a big flag to me anyway, if I were ICE. but yes, right. You do a little bit of Googling, and you're not there. I mean, I guess they've hired worse, for sure. But your point is that the vetting process stinks. So you told everybody they hired you, and then what happened?
Well, I wrote this article, and I expected it to be a big deal. I didn't expect it to blow up quite the way it did. It did blow up, and after about a day of it blowing up, DHS responded, and they called the story a lazy lie and said that they'd offered me a tentative. They explained the tentative selection letter process, which, as I just said, I did receive a tentative offer. That's the thing that happened, and that was very normal, but that's not what the article was about. Right.
And then you now talk about what you posted, because you kind of outed them.
Yeah, it was satisfying. I responded and also quoted with just, you sure about that? And then the screen capture of the video that I took of the ICE portal, which again, you can see online. And, look, if there's an alternate explanation, I'd love to hear it. It says, final offer accepted. It says EOD date September 30th. If those things mean something else, I'd love to know. I did reach out to ICE for comment before the story was published. They never got back to me. It's been a couple of days now since I posted that video, and DHS has been radio silent as far as any kind of response to what I think is pretty powerful proof that the lazy lie isn't on this end.
Right. They're hiring anybody that can walk.
It would appear so.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think you did us a favor. I mean, I think anybody who saw what I saw in Chicago and who is seeing what we are seeing in Minnesota now knows that these are untrained, overarmed, random folks who self-select for the job of torturing other Americans.
Yes. And that was something also when I was at this ICE Expo and I was able to talk to the agent, which again, not part of the interview process, just something we could do optionally. And when I came in, he wanted to be very clear to me that I wasn't going to be able to go out on the street right away, that there would probably be a paperwork job for the first 6 months at least. And he outright said, and this was pretty implied, but he said it outright, I've talked to a lot of guys who are just eager to get out there and put cuffs on guys. And I'm always telling them, slow your roll. It's not going to happen right away. And, I responded, with my analyst background, which is, what I was in the military. And I was like, well, that actually would make more sense for my skill set, honestly, to be pushing papers. And his demeanor changed. And he was like, listen, to be clear, we want as many badges and guns on the street as we can. But it seemed like that was the first time that expo that he had heard anything like that. That was the impression that he gave.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of people who are self-selecting for ICE are, in fact, excited to do the things that we're seeing on television and in the case of Chicago on the streets. It's pretty distressing that that's the kind of people they're getting.
Well, and you have a theory about why we're getting those people. You describe the path between the war on terror after 9/11, which you were part of, and this current place we find ourselves in. And I thought that was really interesting. Talk about that.
Yeah. So the officer that I spoke to, and I think it's a good entry point into this, which is it's a wider thing. Like me, enlisted right out of high school, like me, deployed, and like me, got out as soon as he could. He said that he wanted to get as far away from the violence of the military as possible. That's a direct quote. The word violence of the military was used. But he wasn't really able to assimilate back into society, which is a very common problem for veterans. And so after about 6 months, he decided to go into law enforcement instead, which eventually led to a career with ICE. He'd been doing this for I believe, about a decade. And that it's so emblematic of what's happening here. We attempted to bring something that we call democracy overseas at the barrel of a gun. And we used words like terrorist and weapons of mass destruction to justify it. You are allowed to kill terrorists. They're terrorists. You're allowed to invade a country if they have weapons of mass destruction. That's just fine. And now, couple decades on, we're seeing things like, I think the most vivid visual example was January 6th, where they, this is the idea that democracy is something that can happen through violence is now completely normalized, and it's come home to roost. People doing door knock raids in Minneapolis right now. These are military tactics, albeit carried out by people who haven't been trained very well. This is, I hate to say, I don't want this to happen. I love this country, but these are chickens coming home to roost. It's painful to see.
Laura, you're describing, the arc you're describing is about the ideas that we put in place around the war on terror, that we can impose a view of democracy, that local culture doesn't matter, that force can create the rule of law somehow, all of these things. But is there also a trauma of service aspect of this? You sort of said they're having trouble. A lot of people who were veterans are having trouble reintegrating into society. And I don't think we treated our vets very well. I think is it possible you're also talking about that?
Definitely that's a factor. I think a lot of the vets who self-select for stuff like this, and it is. I know I have a lot of friends who had a really hard time assimilating. I did okay, but I have friends who, had a much harder time of it. I have some friends that aren't here anymore because they had such a hard time about it. Mm-hmm. there's a trauma there, and the VA has gotten a lot better since I got out. I got out in 2010 when the VA was not good with especially mental health issues.
Yep.
They've improved significantly, but it's a little late. And you can't really undo damage that's done. I've heard the term moral injury recently, and I think it's a really good term. It's not necessarily the trauma of combat by itself, and it may not even involve combat, but the trauma of having gone to a place and done or seen things done that were wrong. And people's minds immediately go to things like massacres, but that's not even necessarily what I'm talking about. I mean, I was an intelligence collector and analyst. I did not see combat. I'm very upfront about that every time I write about my military experience. What I did see was the commanders making decisions that got people killed on both sides because they wanted it to look like we were doing stuff. People died for no reason over there. And a lot of people saw that, and a lot of people saw that up close and personally, and a lot of people saw that happen to their friends. And that's not even getting into what we did to the people of Afghanistan and Iraq and the other places that we went into, at least 1 million people are dead because of what we did. And yeah, that leaves a psychological mark. I think it leaves a mark on the country, and I think it also leaves a mark on the individuals who participated in it.
Yeah, and we are seeing some of that play out in their eagerness to join ICE and to do the thing that the government taught them to do, but now to our own people.
Yeah, and I do want to be clear. I mean, it's a significant number of veterans. It's not negligible. It's also not all veterans. Some of the most radical lefties I've ever met have also been veterans. It can go a lot of different ways. I think disillusionment can break in several ways, but there's definitely a problem where you do have a militarized population who never wasn't able to reintegrate and is willing to wreak the same kind of violence here at home.
Yeah, let me be clear. I agree with you. We are not talking about most vets who did incredible, brave, dangerous things on behalf of a country that asked them to do it. That is something that all of us honor, but it comes at a cost. And for some veterans, that cost is personal and plays out in destructive behavior afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think that's
Laura, the head of a university in Palestine, Birzeit University, told me once that people who are oppressed end up with some terrible antisocial behaviors. It creates some pathology. Being oppressed creates some pathologies. But then he looked at me and he said, but being the oppressor creates pathologies in your population too. Yes.
I think that's accurate. I think about the word brutalize sometimes. To make a brute of somebody. When you hurt somebody or when you are hurt, it does. I think it just has to lessen the amount of value that we place on human life because we see or are ourselves perpetrating that degradation. And I think, of all people, that's somebody who would talk about an expert on that, somebody who has experienced that in Palestine. Absolutely.
Yeah. Have you experienced any ongoing repercussions to this piece? I mean, are you being, I hate to ask this, but what does your Twitter feed look like?
Well, people are a little bit upset. By and large, the response has been very positive. Of course, there are going to be people on X, the everything app that Elon has magically transformed, who are basically there's just not a lot they can say. The quotes to me are very funny. There is, they should have hired you because they respect diversity of opinion, which is very funny to me. I feel like that's self-evidently false. There are some people who have decided that I've lied by omission and this is a felony and I'm going to jail, which I'm sure is very fun for them to imagine, but untrue. And then of course, that this didn't happen. You're lying. But it's very hard because this is honestly, I care about this for reasons that have nothing to do with this, but even if I was the ICE's biggest fan, if I thought what they were doing was great, I would want ICE agents to be vetted. I would want for the people, if I was an ICE agent to my left and right, to have gone through vetting and training to make sure that they were the kind of people that you can trust. And so, honestly, I've really, more than anything, I've found the reaction very, very funny. In any other time period, the DHS's response would have been, we're going to look into this. This is concerning. We want to make sure this wasn't a one-time glitch. This is of concern, and it really is indicative of the time we live in, that the reaction was just apathy and rage. Like, how dare you say that we did something wrong? We would never do something wrong. Like, guys, you should be concerned about this too. But I mean, look, I've been on the internet for a long time. I've been controversial before. I'm pretty used to people yelling at me. It's fine.
Okay. In the military and throughout in corporate America, in all kinds of situations, leadership matters. Leadership matters. And you know, when you are, particularly in life and death situations, leadership matters enormously. And you certainly get trained on that in the Army. What do you think? How do you even think about being led by Kristi Noem?
It's astounding, honestly. And yeah, that is, I mean, I think you're getting at something really important. I've done a few interviews at this point, and there was one where there was somebody else on it and them and the host were talking about how it might not be all ICE agents and we need to not jump to conclusions. And I don't think that's the right conversation to be having. Their leadership is cheerleading horrible violence, murder in the case of Renee Good. They are basically sending a very clear message to ICE, to everyone in the DHS, and to America that not only is this going to be tolerated, it's going to be celebrated. And I don't know how, I mean, this leadership, this is going to create, as if ICE wasn't already a cesspool of a culture that's had these problems long before Trump took office. Even without considering that, you have from the top a encouragement of this culture of violence against Americans, this desire to see the citizens of their own country as the enemy. It's sick stuff.
Well, it began on day one of Trump's term when he pardoned all the January 6ers.
Yes, it did. And I mean, and I agree that was a new chapter in just the idea that, yes, you can attack the institutions of America or the people of America, and it's fine. And also, in addition, this as not as a but as in addition, ICE has been a monstrous organization for many, many years. There were allegations of sexual assault in detention centers during Biden's term, of horrible abuses. For almost as long as it's existed, this organization, I think, is evil. And when people say abolish ICE, they don't necessarily mean no immigration enforcement, but this agency specifically, which was founded in 2003, has a real problem with culture that has gotten orders of magnitude worse since Trump took office in his second term. And I don't see how we redeem it.
No, I agree with you. I think it has to be replaced. Absolutely replaced with something new that will do the job.
Yeah.
When you were deployed, was there any? Did you notice a NATO presence?
Definitely in the larger bases, and I, of course, I had a worm's eye view of this. I was, the first time I was in Khost province to the east, the second time in Farah province to the west. But, you go through like Kandahar or Bagram, the big bases, and yeah, I mean, they're going to meet people of all different nationalities were there. You could dine at Tim Hortons if you wanted to. They had all, just people from the entire coalition. In Farah, the Italians had their own small base just attached to ours. There was definitely a desire to present a united front, us and our allies, the coalition of the willing. And boy, howdy, has that tune changed over the past few months.
I raise it because I want to ask you this. So you went to war because America was attacked and NATO was there with you in bases like in Kandahar. And now the United States is threatening to invade a NATO country. Like what do you and I don't know if you have talked to other vets still. What's their feeling about this?
I mean, I can tell you my feeling is that it's surreal. It's surreal, and it's just I don't even have words for how strange
repulsive.
and terrible it is to have turned on our own allies in this way. And over what? Over a war of expansion? This is not the country that I love. I mean, I consider myself a patriot. I love this country. I wouldn't be so mad at it if I didn't love it deeply. This is not something that I recognize. This is not an action that I can personally approve of. None of my friends like it. I mean, of course, I have a very select group of friends we select for, how we believe, and the people who disagree with me have largely fallen off the map for me. But it feels so contrary to everything that we've done over the past couple decades, at least in the sense of attacking our allies.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. I mean, I want to hone in for a second on, you feel like the need to say, I love this country when you're criticizing the government. Being able to criticize the government is part of what people love about this country, and something that these guys want to take away. I am so proud of my fellow Chicagoans for what we did when ICE was here. I am so amazed at the courage of the people in Minneapolis and St. Paul for what they are doing every day now. I think there's so much. I mean, Bill Clinton said it, and he was right. There's nothing wrong with America that can't be fixed by what's right in America.
I love that. And I completely, I've seen, I live in New York, so I haven't seen it on the ground, but watching the people of Chicago deal with this invasion, and now watching Minneapolis deal with something that's somehow even worse, knowing that, that may await more cities, and seeing, the absolute courage of everyday people who simply will not tolerate this. And you've captured it perfectly. There's almost no one thing I can add to it. That's what I love about America.
Yep.
The people of America don't like being told what to do. And we're really seeing that.
Unless they run big Fortune 500 companies or universities or law firms. Yeah.
Yes.
And have houses on Martha's Vineyard,
once you get a certain amount of power,
whose mortgages they're worried about.
Yeah. No. It's just, and I see this in New York, where, we have not been under attack the way Chicago has or the way Minneapolis has. And I hope that doesn't change. But like many cities, ICE is present. ICE conducts raids. And I've seen it in my own city, where everyday people who they're not radicals. They're not, these are just people going to work or going about their lives who just will not take it, will yell, will scream, will do what they can to stop it. And that is the spirit of this country. And, Trump and his cronies want to take this mantle of Americans and patriots. They're the real Americans. No, they are not. No, they are not. Those are the real Americans.
That's right. You're not guilty of this, thank God. But a lot of people who write and observe this are. They think this is Democrats versus Republicans. They want to say, here's what the Democrats have to do to beat this in the Republicans. And I look on the streets and I talk to the people who are out there, as I did in Chicago, and people are not running out of their houses because they want to have a political discussion. They're running out of their houses to protect the country, and they think this is about America versus MAGA. This isn't about Democrats versus Republicans.
Yeah, completely agree. And frankly, thank God it isn't, because the National Democratic Party has let us down so completely that it truly does boggle the mind how badly they have met this moment. They have not met this moment at all. It's everyday people who have met this moment, and everyday people who, frankly, have been let down by both parties. The reason Trump came to power is because people were fed up. Fascism, and I'm going to go ahead and call it that, is a bad solution to real problems. People are spiritually suffering. People are physically suffering. There's great material want at the same time that billionaires are hoovering up basically all of the money in the economy. People are scared and they're unhappy, and they've turned to a strongman, which has happened over and over again in history. Yeah. And the answer, people keep thinking, and less, thankfully, because I think it's becoming obvious this isn't true. Once we win the midterms, once we win 28, everything can go back to normal. There is no going back to normal. We did that in 2020. We tried to go back, and we just ended up back where we were. You can't go back. Back is what got us here. We have to go forward. We have to create a world that's better for people so that everybody, regardless of what their political affiliation is, can live a decent life.
Yep. I mean, I think there is a governing majority to be cobbled together in America where we won't just swing back and forth. But the reasons for the back and forth, I believe, are in part because the Supreme Court over 20 years has weakened our democracy. I mean, when democracy works, people live better lives because the people in charge are working for the voters. But if they're only working for the map makers and the money, courtesy of gutting the Voting Rights Act and Citizens United and decisions like it, a lot of legislators aren't working for our people anymore, and we see the results. They're working for map makers and money. And so people are like, yeah, the democracy is not working for me. Well, it's not working because it's been weakened by people who never believed in it. And we have to shore it up in ways that we have not tried in a long, long time.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, the disillusionment is huge. And I think, yeah, Citizens United especially is, and, even if people don't know that's why it isn't, they know that they know it's
not working for them. Yep. Yeah. Talk about your piece, The Law of the Gun, because that was also fabulous.
Yeah. Thank you. This was just about, we are dealing with an administration that does not recognize any law except for the law of who's in power. Stephen Miller has some incredible quotes. The man is brilliant at saying the quiet part out loud. I've never met anyone better at it. Just about
since Herman Goering, yeah.
Yeah, channeling the spirit. Yes.
Yeah.
That this is, why do we deserve Greenland? Because we're the most powerful, he says. Why are we able to do these things? Because we can. And at the point where there is no law but the law of the gun, when that's the only law they're following, then the laws that used to protect us no longer do. They shackle us. These are laws that we are expected to follow and they aren't. We're expected to play by the old rules and they aren't. And as horrifying as it is, I think that we have to look around us and understand that the laws, the league, America, as we understood it, is in fact over at this point. Trump has abolished it, and we can't sit back and wait for the laws that we've and the institutions that we've depended on to protect us anymore. I mean, this is not a vote. You cannot vote this out. You cannot legislate this out. These people are using force, and I don't see any other way to respond but in kind.
Well, I want to explore that with you. So are you in the camp that says Governor Walz should call out the Minnesota National Guard and that Democratic governors need to militarize this fight as fast as possible?
Absolutely. And I think they're running out of time to do so. Tim Walz made some noises about that. I was very encouraged, and then he backed off from it, and I was very saddened. The thing is, there's no option where we just don't have any kind of unrest in the streets. The only question that remains to us is, will the National Guard be the ones fighting, or will it be the people? And if Tim Walz doesn't want the kind of violence that he keeps describing in the speeches he makes, this violence of all against all, the people, citizens fighting back against ICE by themselves, if they feel abandoned by the federal government while they're watching their neighbors be brutalized, disappeared, I mean, the descriptions that are coming out of Minneapolis are unreal.
Unbelievably terrible.
Yeah, terrifying. And you can't expect people, especially people with self-respect, to stand by and let that happen. Either you need to help them fight it with the National Guard and with whatever law enforcement is willing to take the side of the people, or you are going to get violence on the street. And I would much prefer the National Guard take care of this. It's a horrible option. People, when I say this, people accuse me of not understanding the gravity of the situation. I really do. I understand how horrible it is that we're at this point, and I wish we weren't. I knocked doors for Kamala Harris despite having huge disagreements with her because I didn't want to get to this point. But we are at this point. And we can't, the only other option is to knuckle under and become the kinds of people who can live in a society run by an authoritarian dictator. And I personally do not think that's the right answer. I'm not willing to live like that. Nobody should be.
So I am not quite in your camp because I feel the power of a more Gandhi and Dr. King approach, which is what's going on today on the streets. And it is appalling. Americans are are siding with the peaceful protesters every minute. My worry about the National Guard and about militarizing the fight is the Insurrection Act. And you were part of the U.S. military. You know that if ordered to take down a National Guard, they will and they can. And it would be an enormous bloodbath. And I don't know. I mean, I'm going to ask you the same thing I've asked every former and current military person I've ever talked to. Do you see any scenario where we could have a Tiananmen Square in the United States? Would the U.S. military fire on Americans?
I hope not. I think, the military is not a very individualistic organization, but it is still made up of individuals at the end of the day. And I think the reason that Trump has kept Pete Hegseth in power, despite Pete Hegseth screwing up in almost every imaginable way and being a huge embarrassment, is because people like Hegseth and Kash Patel are willing to do the work of purging the people that they don't think will follow those orders. And I think those orders could come down, and I think that some soldiers could fire. But I also think that the most powerful people in the military aren't the generals. There's the supply sergeants. They're the people that make the majors who are pushing paperwork. They're the people on the ground actually doing the job. And what I would say, I don't expect the military to fully revolt against Trump. I don't expect a revolution in that way. What I do expect, if the military is called in, and it seems likely that they will be regardless of what the protesters do. Trump is talking about the Insurrection Act.
I agree.
Despite, I
agree.
Yeah.
There's no chance he doesn't use it. Yep.
No. But I think when he does, if he does, what we will all have the thought, is our military really this bad at everything? And the answer will be no. But soldiers are very good at sandbagging. It's a bit of a profession that we embrace and enjoy. And I think you're going to see a lot of sandbagging if it comes to that. I don't think, people didn't sign up to kill their fellow Americans. They signed up to keep the country safe, mostly. And I just... Yeah, it's a nightmare scenario. I also want to point out, and again, I hope it doesn't come to this. Hard to convey how much I hope it doesn't come to this, but I watched us lose a war. The full might of the American military, the most powerful military in the world with all of this money, I watched us lose that war to people with AK-47s and fertilizer bombs and some RPGs. We have never won an insurgency a single time in our history as a country. And I do not think that would change if that insurgency was happening here at home with people's relatives, their friends, their neighbors. It's a nightmare scenario. And as much as Trump seems to want it, I'm not sure how many people are going to go along with it.
Americans don't go along with it. Americans absolutely
exactly. People who love this country and care about it.
Yeah, but so just to go back to the National Guard approach, maybe, and some states we'll see. But the approach that we are currently taking, where ordinary Americans are risking their lives, and in the case of Renee Good, giving their lives for America, this is a very powerful check, and it has turned. If you believe the polling, it has turned the country against this fascist administration. It's led to Americans saying by now significant majorities that ICE should just be abolished. Things that were, that's a very fast change in public opinion. And it's not happening because we're sending our armies out there, state armies. It's happening because our people are demanding it and are showing their courage. The mighty British Empire lost India because of that, not because of a militia. And so I'm not sure I completely agree with you, but I talk to a lot of people who I deeply respect, including you, who think that this is where we are.
And I respect your position as well, and I see the wisdom of it. I think there was a time where it was too early. I think I agree completely that the murder of Renee Good has galvanized people, and seeing the brutality that's coming out against everyday citizens has galvanized people in ways that are important. I am somebody who believes that optics matter and that public opinion matters. My concern, and maybe we're not there yet, maybe I'm jumping the gun, but protests and nonviolent actions often are meant to influence people in power to do something. And I'm not sure that the people in power are influenceable at this point. And I guess whether we're there or not, I do feel like there is a point where it is unfair to ask the people of the United States to fight alone. State governments have the power to protect their citizens.
Yeah.
And I wish they'd use it.
So we have a test of this right now, because ICE is only funded to January 31st. And we're going to need, Congress is going to have to consider a continuing resolution again or an actual appropriations bill that further funds ICE. So we're going to find out if the political system has learned anything, if those people in power have learned anything. And everybody who's listening, I mean, you're going to say this every day until January 31st. If there's a Democrat who votes to give 1 penny to ICE, we need to throw them out of office. If there's a Republican we should pressure every Republican as well who sees this stuff, because if you fund ICE, you have put the bullet in the gun that killed Renee Good, and you'll do it again. And every one of those abuses is on your hands.
Could not agree more. Could not agree more. If the Democrats fund ICE on January 31st, it will be a complete dereliction of duty. Every individual who did that has co-signed what happened to Renee Good and what is happening to the people of Minneapolis and what happened to the people of Chicago and LA. And I fear very much that the party's going to do that. And it's going to continue. Absolutely, it's going to continue to happen. It's just, can't.
All right, tell everybody where to find your work.
You can find me, first of all, by Googling my name, Laura Jadid. Do more than ICE did, and you'll find me immediately. You can also go to firewalledmedia.com. That's my Substack, firewalledmedia.com. That's where a lot of my writing appears, and I hope to see you there.
Thank you, Laura. It was a pleasure to talk to you today.
Absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye.
You're listening to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
Okay. All right, everybody. Look, I told you this year we're going from defense to offense. And David Pepper, author, teacher, painter, former head of the Ohio Dems, founder of Blue Ohio, indefatigable teacher of the importance of state houses in our national democracy, my friend and now candidate for lieutenant governor of Ohio, is back with us. David, hello there.
Hey, I'm so glad to be with you. Thank you. It still gives me chills to hear that last part. I'm really, really honored to be running for lieutenant governor of Ohio with Amy Acton for governor.
Yeah, I mean, you and I've never lacked for things to talk about, but now you're a candidate too, and a candidate against Vivek Ramaswamy, and you have the best chance in a generation to end that cycle of corruption in Ohio, which is a state that, you've taught the country about, and I've called the land that democracy forgot.
Yeah, I've thought this for some time. Sherrod Brown is running for re-election, not re-election, but running for a Senate seat.
Yep.
And Dr. Acton, as we've talked about, we can talk about more today, is this very unique figure who is very widely respected, known in every county. I think it's the best top of the ticket we've had since 2006, which is when we did flip Ohio, both the governor and the Senate seats then. And we're running in a year that, we got to do everything right, take nothing for granted. We know there are challenges, but when you keep looking at every day at, what Trump's doing and other things, there does seem to be the potential for one of those years where it comes together. So you got great top of the ticket, second midterm of a unpopular, to say that, at least in a troubling other ways, president. And all of a sudden, I think that combines to potentially a very good year in Ohio.
I'm really, really excited about this, but I don't think our listeners know anything about Dr. Amy Acton.
Yeah.
So just talk a little bit about your running mate, the woman who's running to capture the governorship.
Sure. Thanks for asking. And it's funny, in Ohio, she's a household name. And for one reason, she was the health director of Ohio during COVID, standing next to a Republican governor. He selected her. The Republican State House confirmed her. And in a way that is sort of like a lightning strike, she stood in front of our television sets, and I'm a Democratic chair. I had no reason to all of a sudden be excited about this person as a leader, but she was this incredible leader who stood up every day in a nonpartisan, non-political way, helped guide us. and from rural, hospitals and businesses to schools to you name it, people watched her by the millions. And she had this incredibly unique leadership style that got her a Profile and Courage Award from the Kennedy Center Library. She was featured in the New York Times. And within just a few weeks, she shot up in popularity where she was either the most or second most popular figure in Ohio in the 60s or higher. And that just doesn't happen in politics. Normally, when you enter politics, you enter as a partisan figure. There are already huge negatives attached to you because of that. She entered, and in a state like Ohio, it's a huge state. It's very hard to get known. You could be an amazing mayor of one city or a congressperson, but we have 8, 9 media markets. You don't get known across the state. It's very difficult. In this case, she had this statewide launch. Little girls were dressing up as Amy Acton for Halloween. People made their own yard signs because their last name is Acton. Act on love, not hate. There was a bobblehead doll made. This was not her. It was just people. And the closest equivalent, although this is going to sound a little bit over the top, I don't want to compare her yet to this, but was how John Glenn got famous.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah,
David.
you get famous. Exactly. You get famous. She was a hero. She was viewed as a hero. You get famous being a hero through something else, and all of a sudden, that means when you enter politics, you enter in an entirely different way from everybody else.
Yeah,
and maybe a certain types of sports people can do this, but it is like John Glenn, and that's why I always thought, long before I even knew her, and I got to know her more recently, I was sitting around when I was Democratic chair thinking, geez, if this person ever decided to run for office, she'd be a force. And that's exactly what is happening now. She announced a year ago. She goes everywhere in the state. People line up to meet her. She gets crowds of hundreds where normally you get 50. They stand in line and she's an amazing grassroots candidate, talks to every single person, selfies, you name it. And there's an energy to this campaign that is truly special. And it is above, as much as you can be in this very tough time, it's above party. And that's why you see, so yes, Vivek Ramaswamy is known. He also is known, but his introduction was your typical not so good one. Very high negatives, very partisan, very toxic. So all this translates into what has been the last 2 months. Every poll has this race either tied or with Dr. Amy Acton ahead right now. So she's got this really unique and authentic connection with Ohio voters, a trust built with Ohio voters that is a very rare opportunity in politics. But she still is a doctor, not a politician. Yeah. And that's really the brand that I think is so successful for her.
So there's two areas I want to talk to you because of what you just said. The first is there were a lot of people who stood next to their governors during COVID who got burned up because that was an enormously painful time. Yes. And almost everybody who stepped in front of a microphone during COVID ended up getting massacred. Right. How is it that she was, able to not only survive that horror show, but remain trusted? That's
it's
just
funny.
A remarkable thing.
The political figures who stood up actually, Andy Beshear won by more. I always say the only person who lost because of COVID an election was Donald Trump because people did not think he handled it well. Mike DeWine, the governor here, he got reelected by 26 points because people kind of thought, hey, with Amy Acton, he did a good job. Huh. But you're right. A lot of people, everyone from nurses to teachers to some of these public health experts, it was a tough time. But it was somehow the way she led with empathy, with hard truths, with support, kind of a humble way too. She wasn't standing up there saying, I've got all the answers. She's saying, let me give you the facts so you, school principal, and you, business leader, you, hospital director, I'm going to give you the hard facts so you can solve the problem. So she had this very empowering way of leading. That again, I can just tell you, having not known her, I watched and it was just so impressive. And my reaction is clearly what most Ohioans thought. Here's an interesting data point. So it's been, she was on TV every day, millions watching. There was a poll done just a few months ago. where it said, how do you feel about, different people's job approval?
Yep.
The senator, Trump, the governor, and Amy Acton as health director, which was 5 years ago. The result of that, she had the highest job approval rating by far, still now 5 years after she was last doing that work. Still today, the single highest job approval rating in the state of Ohio happens to be the Democratic candidate for governor. When is the last time that happened?
Yeah,
I don't know if it ever
I
happened.
can't wait to meet the woman. I mean, boy, I just as a candidate, David, first off, you're a formidable candidate, but you're very lucky to have found a partner like that. Wow.
Yes. I wouldn't have just, I'm excited to run, but it's a big change for my family, everything else. I wouldn't just do it to do it. I feel very honored to work with her. I learn from her.
Yeah.
And we also kind of have a nice complementary energy. But by the way, one other thing about her, just not to keep going on, but the other thing about her story that's so compelling for voters, she grew up in a very tough circumstance in Youngstown. She was, as she says, a frequent flyer for children's services, experienced, abuse, and finally, at a certain age, was moved into a apartment that moved into a good school district, which she will tell you saved her life. So the other part of her story that we know is compelling is it's like this gets to some of the topics of the campaign. She's lived a lot of the challenges that Ohioans are living through right now.
Yeah.
She knows how tough it is for many families because she had to overcome it, got herself into med school. She became a public health preventive medicine doctor, but she had to overcome, so her story is also a Youngstown, Ohio story. And in Ohio, that means something when someone isn't just coming in kind of guessing as to what the challenges are, but had to confront them herself, had to overcome them through grit, through toughness. And so so it's just like that's life journey. And we can get into comparing her to Vivek's life journey.
In a minute,
it's a very compelling life journey.
Yep.
Long before she got famous and heroic saving us, her journey, I think, speaks to a lot of people, not just in typical places where you expect Democrats to win, but to nurses in rural Ohio and to others trying to overcome. Her story, I think, is very compelling. And she tells it in a way that people think, okay, she gets what we're going through. There's a trust level also due to that story. And it's especially resonant right now when people feel squeezed in every way and in all aspects of their life.
The other thing that you mentioned earlier was that in some ways it feels not quite like a partisan fight, but something else. And I want to just relate that to what's going on in the country. I think people are beginning not to see this anymore as a Democratic versus Republican fight. You know as well as I do, the Democratic Party brand has been badly beaten up, whether it's deserved or not. And Donald Trump has transformed the Republican Party into this. I think now most of the country would call it a fascist party. It's not a conservative party. And sort of, so the traditional, well, this is just a Democrat versus Republican election is not, it doesn't feel like that anymore anywhere in the country. It feels like, well, there's the crazy MAGA side and then there's everybody else. I mean, this is a chance for sane people to put together a governing majority that lasts again. And we haven't seen that since the Republicans did it in 1980.
Yeah, no, I do think her brand is better than either party. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Her type of leadership feels different and not partisan in a way that, one of the reasons she's been tied in every poll is she's consistently led with independents somewhere between 15 and 22 points in the last 3 months in every poll. And so someone who is viewed, and they're going to want to turn it into they're going to try and turn it into some partisan figure, but she just isn't. That's not how she's viewed. And that has kept her, it kind of above that. Yeah. And she says, in a way that I think is effective, this is bigger, as you just said, this is about a certain sect of sort of extreme ideology and money against everybody else. And everybody else includes independents, Democrats, and a bunch of Republicans. And that's sort of the base and coalition she's trying to build. And so far, she built it without even trying during COVID. And the goal is obviously to keep building it. But yes, I think that she's everyone's willing to, when you see, we'll talk about it, when you see Ramaswamy saying what he said the last couple of days on this video, that Medicaid is a mistake. Yeah, we got to fight too. We're going to fight that stuff. We cannot allow someone to win. But she's also, I think, able to pull together this cross-party coalition, because a lot of this fight is above party at this point. And it really is about a few, very well-heeled people, and our opponent is a perfect symbol for it, trying to continue to run government, delivering terrible results for most people and everybody else. And I think she's a perfect sort of representative of everybody else trying to fight back.
Yeah, organized money versus organized people.
Yes.
And the money's had the upper hand for a long time. But like, Donald Trump is an end, he's not a transitional figure. No one can be him. And Vivek tried and got trounced by Trump in the primary. He tried to out Trump for a while. And now he's still trapped in his own sort of Trumpist crazy world where let's not give people health care. It's a bad idea, which, as you pointed out, he said just, 2 days ago?
Well, that was from before. That was a tape that came out.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but that's him. That was him. That was him, I think, somewhere during the presidential run, or maybe after.
Yeah.
Last couple of years, though.
The country, I think, is just desperate to move on from that kind of anger and hate, and let's treat poor people like they're dirt, and let's treat everybody else like they're dirt, and be, his speeches were all just fiery anger. Yeah, and aren't we done with that?
Yeah, I think if people see him, I think you're going to see people like him try and reinvent themselves, because he's seeing the same numbers we are. His negatives are in the 40s, which is kind of astounding, because normally when your negatives in the 40s, it's because someone spent hundreds of millions saying terrible things about you. No one's done that. He's accomplished it all by himself. His tweets, his Fox News appearances, his presidential run. The longer he's on the scene, the worse he does. So I think he's seeing, there's a little, you can kind of sense it on the Republican side. They're starting to really worry, who is our candidate? This guy doesn't seem very good. So I think he's going to try and reinvent himself. But I think at the end of the day, just like this Medicare thing, I think he can't help it. This is who he is. Right now, imagine this. So a few months before he announced his run for governor, he was still at Doge. He was fired on the first day, but he literally tweeted that the reason that he said Americans, Ohioans are struggling is because they're lazy and strive for mediocrity. That's the problem. They're not working. Who does that?
Well, somebody who has never met people in Ohio. Somebody who's never met anybody in Youngstown, for sure.
You could run a whole campaign just sticking that on a billboard, just quoting them. Yeah. And then now, believe it or not, you know me well enough. I'm always driving around this state. I got in the car in Cleveland and 9 p.m. I was home by midnight, waking up my kids. This guy literally is on a jet. This is like a bad movie. He takes a jet from Akron to Columbus. And I'm talking about
laughing.
Corporate.
That's funny.
Yeah. So in Amy Acton, let's be clear. So I'm driving around my F-150 truck. Yeah. Amy Acton's in a white Jeep. Yeah. So here you have driving around what normal people do, understanding half the campaign is who you meet between the destinations. What town are you going through? What diner do you stop at? This guy is taking off in airports, landing, and checking the box. Been to this town, almost just sort of a corporate approach. So I think even though he's going to try and reinvent himself,
you won't.
I don't think he can.
Well, you're too smart to let him.
Yeah, but I don't think he can do it. I literally think, and so the other day you probably saw, he quit social media, but he quit social media. And how did he announce it? In an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. Who does that running for governor of Ohio? So I just don't think he's going to try, but I think that he just has a certain way. It is, I don't know where it came from, but I think for a state like Ohio and people in Ohio, right out of the national story right now, electric bills, childcare, worried about public education schools being destroyed, all the other pressures of bills going up, healthcare. the choice between Dr. Amy Acton to solve those problems and a guy in a jet, I mean, who just said Medicaid and Medicare were mistakes. I mean, it would have, I'll just put it this way. It is one heck of an opportunity that we better grab, because that contrast, given what people are going through, an out-of-touch guy versus Dr. Acton, born and raised and overcoming so much Youngstown, we could not have a better candidate to connect to folks versus what they have.
You've been so good at helping people understand that, what Ohio has lost in the last 20 years, what Ohio has lost, just what the people of Ohio have lost in terms of people just paying attention to the towns they live in. I mean, and you've written a lot about this. Like, when the government doesn't care about rural Ohio, the legislators tell the people there, why don't you move? Yeah. Well, when you have a candidate who flies over them and doesn't stop to talk to them, they can't possibly expect better governance. They can't possibly expect a leader who cares about them.
That's a great point. So one of the structural reasons for all this is, as I've said, is a gerrymandering system that has made it so most state reps in these rural areas, they're going to win no matter what. They don't feel the need to serve their communities, so they give away the strength of public schools so that vouchers are flowing into suburbs 200 miles away. They didn't put in broadband because the people, they're not going to lose the election. They actually, I will say this, and I haven't agreed with all these folks, like they at least did have governors who I think, like Mike DeWine during the last, who tried. So here you would combine a gerrymandered and corrupt state house that isn't serving these communities with a guy who treats the whole state as a flyover state. Yeah. I mean, if he would be governor. So it almost makes it worse than it's been. And by the way, one other thing that to try and frame my entering the race. So me, I spent 5 years exposing the corruption of the state house before HBO started running documentaries on it, which are on there right now. So I called it a laboratory of autocracy. I said, this place is the reason why everyday outcomes for everyday Ohioans are declining. They're giving it all away to private interests. So that's me. Amy Acton picked me, and I hope that's a signal to Ohioans. Okay, that team wants to do something different. Who did Vivek Ramaswamy pick for who's lieutenant governor? The president of the Ohio Senate, one of the two institutions that's been doing all the damage. So you literally have this billionaire guy with the absolute announcement of the status quo of a broken state house that's running us in the ground. If you like that, go for them. If you want a team that thinks something's wrong and that it's a travesty that small towns are dying or our big cities are being underfunded and ripped up in terms of gerrymandering, if you don't like that, we got to change for you. I mean, so one thing that helped us in the LG pick was that he went with literally, and press commented on this, he went, even though we're literally still emerging from the biggest scandal in the history of our state, through that state house.
Yeah, which followed the other biggest scandal.
Yeah, which followed another one where they ripped off schools to give it to a for-profit online school, in quotes, it was a scam. Like, he literally picked one of the two leaders of that place as his LG. So it's the perfect frame of, if you want something different, you've got it in Dr. Acton and myself trying to help her. If you want the same, you got it on steroids in a billionaire running and an LG who has literally been leading one of the two institutions of this very corrupt, State House Square, Capitol Square.
I mean, I don't want to get too in the weeds. I mean, mostly we focus on the lives of the people in Ohio, but just to talk about the governing for a second, if you're going to take on the corruption in the state, if you're going to repair the government so that it works for everybody, you need somebody who's actually paid attention to how the corruption works and knows how to fight it. And you have made a great career out of really understanding that, and stuff that people don't look at. I mean, whether it's the way the pension funds are governed, for
Right.
example. Just stuff that ordinary folks don't pay too much attention to, but it really matters in their lives. And so I
Yes.
don't think you have to campaign on every detail like that, but people need to know that you really know where the bodies are buried and know how to help a great governor lift this state government up so it works for people again.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. I mean, I know how there are a lot more bodies buried that I don't even know about, but I know the ammo, and I know that basically for too long, the overarching policies of Ohio have basically been driven by pay to play, and there's been nobody. There hasn't been a majority that's basically there to serve the common good, and that's one reason one thing I said the other day when Dr. Act and I rolled out is, if you're failing in one thing as a state, let's say your schools were struggling, but everything else was doing fine. Well, you got to focus on the schools. Or let's say, child care costs were out of control, but everything else was fine. You focus on child care. If everything is failing, in Ohio, I hate saying this because I love Ohio. We are a great state. We got great people. But if I can show you data that our health outcomes are plummeting, our public schools are plummeting. They've been defunded, and these crazy for-profit experiments have cost them dearly. Our child care is one of the least affordable in America. If you're failing in almost everything, it's because something much more rotten is happening at the core. And what's happening at the core is the corruption that means that the main functions of Ohio government are really not about public service anymore. They are about taking public power and using it to benefit certain well-heeled interests so that these private interests get all the benefit while the public, the everyday Ohioan, pays the price. And so, yes, we're going to focus on issues. We have plans, and we'll roll out plans on education and how to build great public schools again. And we've got to reduce child. I was in Steubenville, Ohio the other day. They literally explained to me, there is so little affordable child care in Ohio, we take our kids to West Virginia for child care.
Wow.
I can go through that with property taxes going up because they're underfunding schools, or we have less affordable higher ed than other. We need to take on all those issues. But more than anything, we also have to deal with the corruption, which means that if we do, the North Star becomes serving the public again and not serving all the private interests. And that's if you don't fix that, you'll never get the results on any of these issues. So you have to go in there with that attitude. And that's what we're going to do.
David, I'm excited. How much fun was it for you to roll out this campaign for a statewide office back in your home in Cincinnati?
I will clue you in that I wish we had planned it perfectly. They had set that venue up before I was finalized as the pick. But to your question, it turns out that our public rollout, at least in Cincinnati, was 3 blocks from where I grew up and where my dad still lives, about 2 blocks from the little elementary school that I walked to every morning, and right on the road where I rode my bike to go to the swim club and the bowling alley up the hill. And we were right there. It was amazing. When I asked the folks, my mom, until she passed away in March, she would run a postcarding party every Thursday. And in this crowd of we had 300, we had the whole overflow room full and the main room full. And so it was an amazing homecoming. And I asked the crowd, how many of you were at my mom's house and dad's house doing postcards? And like 40 hands raised up.
Oh, that's so great.
It was an absolutely perfect coming together. I mean, it was very special for me, very personal. My wife was there, Alana. My 2 kids were there. But to be back where the town, it's called Wyoming, Ohio. To be in the little town where I grew up was just amazing, and we had a great time. And again, going back to Dr. Acton's style, and I think her style is she's a very graceful person in a way that you don't see much anymore. And I think in this moment, and this is coming on the heels of Minnesota and Greenland and Venezuela, there's something about, and we have a good energy together. And this is a crowd that's looking for hope. And in the end, despite all the tough stuff that we have to talk about, and there was an energy leaving that room of hope that we can do better. And we have public servants, not just us, but running for state house, running for other seats. There's a group of people stepping up all over to do better. And I think that the frustration and the fear are sort of finding in this candidacy, I think, a lot of hope and a vibe that makes them feel like, let's get to be part of this.
Yeah.
And so it really, that event was really special in all those ways.
I got 2 minutes left, David, and I'm so excited at this, but will you tell people what it means for the country to make this shift in Ohio?
Well, obviously, I mean, our number one goal is to just serve the everyday interests of Ohioans who are struggling and reduce costs and all that. So let's make sure that that's clear. But I do think, if you're able to, if we're able to win this race, it obviously has massive national implications. It gives us a chance to end gerrymandering finally, either going to the ballot or the governor and the Secretary of State of Ohio sit on the commission that does the map. So if we're on that commission 2030, we will just simply not allow gerrymandering. It's that simple. Another great candidate we talked about is Sherrod Brown. If Dr. Acton wins, usually the ticket sinks or swings together. That probably gives us the U.S. Senate seat, probably the tipping point Senate seat in the country if we win the majority. And then just we know that we're not going to win long term if we only are winning in largely the coastal states. So we have to find other states to expand the map. In Ohio, getting us back into sort of toss-up territory, or better yet, blue, is really important to have a sort of a longer-term stability in results as opposed to living on the edge, trying to always run the table in coastal states. In places like Illinois, it's just not enough. And so if we need to expand the map, which we do, winning in Ohio is a really important part of that equation.
Yeah. Well, David, I'm thrilled for you. I know you're going to be a great, great candidate. I can't wait to meet Dr. Acton because she sounds amazing.
Thank you.
And we're gonna, I hope we can keep talking and you can.
Can I throw one little politician thing I forgot to do now that I'm a candidate? If you want to help us, please go to Acton for Governor. Well, you know what? I don't even know. It's either actonforohio.com or actonforgovernor.com. We'd love your support.
I will figure out, everybody, what that is, and I will be sure to post it so you can help because we need to help. Thank you, David. Good luck out there.
Thanks so much, Ed. Talk to you soon. We'll have her on soon. Take care.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a break and more to come. Really great conversation to come. You're going to want to hear it.
Welcome back to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody. Look, Donald Trump and his Congress cut healthcare costs, so 14 million of us are going to lose our health insurance, and everyone will pay more. Why did they do it? They did it so that instead they could fund a huge expansion of ICE. And I really want you to know what this decision means and to understand it. To understand what they chose instead of your health insurance, instead of America's health care, you have to pay attention to the unbelievable things that are happening in Minnesota right now. And I am thrilled to be joined now by Patrick Hooligan, who is the editor-in-chief of the Minnesota Reformer. The Reformer is part of State's newsroom, and many of you will remember that we have learned a ton from these guys, from David DeWitt in Ohio, from Holly McCall in Tennessee, who've been regular guests on this show. And look, in an era of shrinking local news coverage, State's newsroom is doing some of the most important work out there in every state. And Patrick and the team in the Minnesota Reformer have really helped the country understand the truth about DHS's operations in that state and about the incredible response of the extraordinary people there. Patrick, welcome.
Good to be here.
How are you holding up?
The work, I think, sustains us. And so for now, we're in good shape. I'm sure at some point we're going to crash out, but we're good now. Thanks.
The work sustains us is such a wonderful thing. I had a text exchange with a friend of mine who lives in a country that I, for her protection, won't name, but it's a country that politics isn't allowed in. A country, one of those Middle Eastern countries. And she said, well, I have hope for you Americans. And I said, here we don't hope, we get to work. And that led her to write the most beautiful response about the American people and how, whether it's in business or in making society better, we put our shoulder, to the wheel and do what's necessary.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing Minnesotans, really of all walks of life, step up in a way that some people might find surprising around the country. But if you know Minnesota well and you know our tradition of civic activism and volunteerism, and some of those very old Scandinavian values that have actually been joined with the similar values of some of our immigrant communities, it's actually not surprising to me the way people have responded.
Yeah, I saw that here in Chicago and what we did when ICE was here, and it was a far smaller invasion, though. I mean, they used Black Hawk helicopters, so it's still repulsive than what's gone on where you are. But I think we're learning about each other, whether it's in Minneapolis or Chicago or even Los Angeles or Charlotte, that Americans don't want to be bullied. They don't want to be pushed around. They don't want to be told what to do. They refuse to be conquered. We're determined to protect each other. And you have taught me. I mean, I'm reading your stuff, and you have these fabulous stories, including in your piece this morning. You mentioned the story of Nimco Omar, which I thought was just so beautiful.
Yeah, she is on the street and she's being profiled, which I think, for so many Americans, this is inconceivable that somebody would be walking down the street and then have federal agents just roll up on them and say, "Show us your papers." I mean, it's almost it's just unbelievable.
No, not to Justice Kavanaugh. It's not.
Exactly. Yeah. And so. They say, "Show us your papers." She says, "No, I'm not going to. I'm a citizen. You don't have a right to do that." And they keep pestering her. At one point, they say, "Where are you from?" Which I find particularly sinister. And she says, "I live in Minneapolis, and I'm a U.S. citizen." And they say, "Oh, we're going to have to take you to the car." And they threaten her. They say, "If you're lying to us, we're going to arrest you." And she stands firm and dignified, and they roll out of there because I think it's not clear to me. Maybe they did a facial recognition deal and saw that she's a citizen, which is also scary to me, or it's possible they just got they got instructed to go somewhere else, but they rolled out, and the whole thing is on video, and it's been real inspired. That's the kind of moment that has occurred over and over again that's inspired folks.
Yeah, and that facial recognition possibility. I guess the connection to the Palantir profiling machine that's being built for this government has become clearer and clearer in your state.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's they're clearly going out and gathering up any and all technology. And the funny irony to me, or paradox, whatever the right word is, I grew up in the 90s in the days when conservatives talked about jackbooted thugs. The feds were coming after us, and there was a strain of conservatism that was very libertarian. And they were concerned about government overreach and government surveillance, and it's just amazing to see that has completely evaporated, and that they are just completely okay with all of these various authoritarian measures.
You know what, Patrick, I'm not sure that conservatives are. I don't think today's Republican Party I think they threw the conservatives out of that party. I think it's just a fascist party now, and anybody who doesn't toe that line isn't in that party anymore.
Clearly, I think that the party is completely transformed in the past 10 years since the nightmare escalator ride.
Right. Yeah. Look, I loved the piece you wrote this morning. I loved it. And I mean, you began, I'm just going to read part of it. The moment has arrived, Minnesota. Masked, heavily armed, poorly trained men are roaming the streets, checking citizenship papers of random Black and Hispanic people, breaking car windows, shooting people in the face, targeting hostile businesses, detaining U.S. citizens without charges. I mean, that's a pretty good summary. My gosh.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there are Minnesota leftists who find that I'm too much of a squishy liberal, And the events of the past month have really radicalized me in a way that I find surprising, and only because of that catalog right there. And I don't understand, if now is not the time to confront and fight back peacefully, then I don't know when that moment would be. And that's really what drove me. Yeah, I mean, that's what drove me to write that yesterday. Was there was a rather corporate media guy here who is telling us that what we need is diplomacy, and I just feel like that's completely off base, and you're really missing the point that if now is not the time to confront the attempt at authoritarianism, then when is it?
I couldn't agree with you more. And so you go and you name this corporate flack for saying I want to be the next Neville Chamberlain, and you also say about the you talk about the brave things that Minnesotans are doing, and then write, by contrast, consider all the cowards who surrendered to the authoritarian attempt last year because they have beach houses and mortgages to think about, the big law firms, big tech, and the corporate media. I love that.
Yeah, and now we're seeing a version of that here locally. As I note a little further down, we have a significant corporate sector here, and they sort of pride themselves on being good corporate citizens, and they've been completely silent.
Well, let's name them: Target, 3M. You got some other big ones.
United Health.
United Health, right?
Yeah. The Death Star, as I call it, Best Buy, General Mills, Cargill is a giant food processing.
Cargill, huge.
Yeah. And not a word. Which, I'm not surprised. And I actually think that progressives 10 or 20 years ago put too much faith in the idea that we could have enlightened corporations. And that if Target had a good Pride Day section, that we were going to be pleased. But I don't think corporations are the place you look for social progress. I think that you need to treat them like they are, as profit creation machines.
That's how our society is organized, for sure, right now, and that's how they're organized. There have been attempts, they're complicated, to say that corporations should have multiple bottom lines and not only be about creating wealth, but they failed. Right now, that's all they do.
Right, and they're all reacting to the threat of retribution from this White House, and understandably, because the feckless Congress has given so much power to the president to set tariff rates that, if Target were to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, you never know. I mean, they import almost everything they sell from China, and that could be subject to some new levy. There's just this president has shown an incredible desire to punish his enemies and reward his friends and reward himself. And so that's the environment they're operating in.
I don't want to get distracted from the horror show where you are, but the horror show where you are is partly a distraction, because while it's been going on, forget the fact that they still won't release their Epstein files. This week, Donald Trump took $500 million of Venezuelan oil that we sold, and he deposited it not in the United States, but in a Qatari bank account that he personally controls. I mean,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Again, you go back to the Reagan Republicans that I grew up with, when this kind of state participation in the economy, at least from what they would say, that
was appalling.
That was socialism. Yeah. And they never wanted this kind of government intervention in the market. I mean, of course, they're always, it was always a bit of a fiction. But in this case, Here he is, taking stakes in private companies and this kind of thing.
And this is personal. It's in a bank account he personally controls.
Yeah. I think that's.
And not even in the U.S., so we can't see what's happening. So, completely corrupt.
Yeah, and just to tie it back to Minnesota, I think he views the Venezuela operation as a kind of personal conquest, just as he views blue states as sort of conquered territories. And I think that's why he has no compunctions about sending 3,000 officers here.
As an editor, you make choices, and one of the choices you made, which I loved, was to publish, it's exactly on this point, an open letter to Denmark from Minnesota, which I thought was fabulous.
Thanks. Yeah, I get a lot of submissions. People, especially right now, people have a lot to say, and I thought this was pretty creative, especially since Minnesota.
Well, tell people about it.
Yeah, this guy, he's a professor at a local university, and Minnesota has ties to Scandinavia. And obviously what's happening just this week with Denmark and the United States meeting about Greenland. And, he says, I know you're baffled about what's happening there. Well, guess what? We're with you there because we're also baffled because we're being treated like an enemy state, even though we have this we are part of the United States. And we were very important in the Civil War and so forth. And certainly Denmark, I think, is thought of as one of America's most reliable allies, and vice versa. Yep. And yet, where the United States, the President of the United States acting with such hostility. And so we join hands here. Yeah.
Well, I read a lot about what's going on in Minneapolis and St. Paul. I think the thing that's captured America, certainly the murder of Renee Good and the reaction to it, but the videos of what's happened have been impossible for Americans to ignore in ways that they, have ignored news stories for a long time.
Yeah, I think it's broken through, and certainly the polling on the Renee Good killing shows that a lot of people have seen it, and a majority of the country thinks that the officer ought to be held to account. And I also just think that the video evidence is such a contrast to the administration's line and lies. As soon as it happened, before anybody had seen anything, they're calling her a domestic terrorist. Then you look at I think the average person looks at a photo of Renee Good and says, come on, stop treating us like fools. And but you're right. There's everybody is a streamer now. It's overwhelming how much video evidence there is. And the Governor Tim Walz, actually made a speech the other night in which he said, please
take out your cameras.
Yeah. And there's a lot of it, it's just, they just break into cars. They're just clear instances. They pepper spray somebody in the eyes for no reason, just unprovoked.
Like from 1 foot away.
Yeah, exactly. So it is going to be a compendium of evidence, and we'll just have to see how the country and the state of Minnesota, for that matter, and local prosecutors, how do we confront this in 2029 when this nightmare is hopefully over? Do we, as we've so often done in the past, kind of sweep it all under the rug and say, let's all move on? Or how do we, in some way, make this era accountable to the future?
Yeah. I'm determined that we make it accountable. And our failures to hold people accountable are partly what brought us here. And I'm not just talking about our failure to hold Donald Trump and his cabal accountable for trying to steal the election in 2020. We never hold anybody in the banking world accountable for their terrible behavior in 2008 that led so many Americans to lose their homes and led to some of the anger that has unleashed this misery upon us.
I think that's a good point. I think so much of what we're experiencing now goes back to the global financial crisis. And, I think that the President Obama was he was kind of drowning when he took office because it was so severe. Yep. And so, I look back at his first term with empathy, but the sense that the elites came out okay and everybody else was left holding the bag, I think created a lot of the conditions for Trump's rise.
Yeah, and Trump's now betrayed them all by his obfuscation on Epstein, which is really just about, are you protecting the elites? It's not about the poor women who were abused, which it should be, but it's about, are you protecting the elites? And he is.
Yeah, well, and of course, he was
one of them.
He's one of them. So that was his problem from the get-go there.
What do people? I'm going to go back to Renee Good for a minute. What do the people in Minnesota? How do they react when they hear the Speaker of the House say? What did he say? What I saw, the angle that I saw was this woman was taunting ICE officers. She was impeding law enforcement. She was violating a number of laws in doing so. And they were very patient, asking her multiple times to remove her vehicle and stop impeding their operation. And she refused. Her partner, whoever that was taunting the officer. It was a crazy set of circumstances. And from the angle I saw, and I'm not the investigator, but from the angle I saw, well, I'll tell you, she revved, she hit the accelerator and hit the ICE officer, and he reacted in a split second. I mean, what do Minnesotans think of that blank, which I cannot say on the radio?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to some extent, you just wonder if Republicans, even unconsciously, know that what they need to put up this front so they can keep the base in line. Because it's just not persuasive to the average person. I think it was seeing the video, and I think that's showing up in the polling. And so I think this is kind of like, well, we've got to keep our solid 35% MAGA in line, and so this is the party line.
Yeah, he also said later, ICE is doing what ICE is designed to do. And if that's the case, we had better get rid of ICE.
Right, and then that certainly means that he's culpable because he
designed it.
Yeah, he helped drive this massive increase. And if the idea was to create an unaccountable, unconstitutional institution,
occupation force,
that and also, what's funny is that I've kind of heard through the grapevine that local police are pretty frustrated right now because they're being embarrassed. This is, these guys, it reflects poorly on law enforcement. And you've seen the police chief here, Brian O'Hara, repeatedly criticize the tactics, and including in the Renee Good case, where, he says, it's like he's scoffing, essentially. He says it's like, training 101, you don't get in front of a vehicle like that.
Nope.
And so that's been interesting to watch. You've also not seen, we had a little bit of unrest the night before last. The crowd got unruly up in North Minneapolis, and I think we're all having like PTSD with George Floyd. But generally speaking, we've not seen clashes between local police and demonstrators. The city council and the mayor came together on a separation ordinance so that the idea that we don't need some hot-headed MPD officers amping up the situation. And generally speaking, I really applaud their behavior in this thus far.
You're put in a terrible position for sure. Very tough. Very, very tough.
Right. And there's a lot of, there's some folks who want them to confront ICE. I think that would be a nightmare scenario. It's not going to happen. But that would just lead to a terrible bloodshed. But I think this current posture of a kind of, I'm not sure, indifference maybe, I don't know what the right word is, but this separation between local police and ICE operations, I think is the best we can hope for.
Well, there is, and Donald Trump has made it clear, there is absolutely the threatened use of the Insurrection Act and bringing in U.S. troops. Oh my God. And the excuse for that would be the local police are impeding the federal government.
Right. Or there's so much disorder, I guess. And of course, the funny thing is they're trying to stoke disorder and
In
chaos.
every way.
Yeah.
In every way.
What they are really hoping for is some kind of response from local activists, which then they can meet with massive repression.
Yeah, coercion is what this administration understands at home and abroad. That's the only thing they understand. I mean, I have so many questions. Before I get too much into the Insurrection Act, in Chicago, they targeted some neighborhoods so that the commerce in those neighborhoods was driven, down to almost zero. Like the restaurants had to have their doors locked all the time. And people from one part of the city, from the less impacted parts of the city would caravan out to these neighborhoods to support them, and to eat in restaurants they hadn't been to before and to do things to try and help. Are some neighborhoods particularly impacted? Are there parts of the city that look like they're empty when they're usually full?
Yeah, we have a really great kind of international mall called Carmel Mall. And we had a story even before the latest incursion. This was in December when they had just started, just completely emptied out and really kind of ghostly. And it's kind of a form of economic warfare. The interesting thing about that is a lot of the vendors are Somali American, and the targeted occupation of those areas is particularly distressing because they're almost all citizens. And those who are not citizens are legal residents. There's really almost no undocumented immigrants from Somalia. I mean, think about it. It's pretty hard to get here from there.
Yep.
And so I have this theory or hypothesis that they actually didn't know that, the feds. I think they just did not realize, like somebody didn't Google it. And they didn't realize that, I think they thought there was a lot of maybe TPS refugees here, and they're just not that many. And most of our Somali population have citizenship, and if not that, then they certainly have a green card. And so, why are you doing this major immigration enforcement in a community with mostly citizens? It's clearly just harassment and intimidation. And so people but they don't want to leave their homes in many cases because, the rule has become detain first and ID later. And nobody wants to get swept up in that. And so, a lot of people are staying home, and it has affected commerce. And these are small business people. I mean, this is supposed to be the American dream. And so it's been particularly distressing. And of course, in the Latino community, extremely devastating in some instances. And so this is just another aspect. Another thing they're doing is they're auditing our largest charity care hospital. They're hitting major institutions just to harass us, drive up compliance costs. Maybe they get lucky and find out that one of our institutions has employed an undocumented person, and then they're going to make a big story about it.
Oh my gosh! And I heard some witness testimony that when they sweep you up first and then check your ID later, that there's been abuse in the detention facilities.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're only going to learn more in the coming days as people are released from the Whipple Federal Building. The other important point here...
Have congressional members been allowed in yet?
No, they were blocked from going there last Saturday. There's now been, I think, a judicial decision on that. And so I believe
Patrick, conditions improved in the facility in Broadview by Chicago when Congress finally had the chance to go in because oversight works.
Exactly. I mean, This is why we have another branch of government.
Yep.
And there's actually a congressional hearing happening here this morning, a field hearing, and that should be interesting to get the U.S. Congress. Oh, I'm sure it's Democrats, but still, I think it's useful to have people from around the country see this up close.
I just don't know how people in your state have maintained their courage. I mean, this is the state where for gosh sakes, the Speaker of your House was assassinated by, someone who was lit up by right-wing propaganda. And she wasn't alone. There were a number of people killed, right? And I mean, just terrible tragedy. And then you have this, and you have the President of the United States saying that your governor was responsible for the killing of the Speaker of the House, and just horrid stuff. I mean, how do people, maintain their faith in the country?
Well, at some point, I'm sure there's a breaking point, but they have attacked a state with strong community bonds and civic bonds and familial bonds. And I mean, it's one of the things about Minnesota that I'm an outsider, so it can bother me sometimes that it seems like, if you didn't go, the question is not, where'd you go to high school, but where'd you go to kindergarten? That's the joke. There's like a New England Yankee kind of thing where it's like, oh, you're not from here. But on the flip side of that, there are these really strong connections that people have and a very strong belief in Minnesota and in the kind of an oasis of social democracy here. And there's a long history of activism. I remember we're the state of Paul Wellstone.
The state of Hubert Humphrey.
Yeah. And so, I mean, Walter Mondale won one state, and it was Minnesota. So there's those tight bonds are, I think, really important now. And I would say to the rest of the country, start getting ready and get to know your neighbors and get ready to defend them.
Yeah, well, we saw that here in Chicago, and we did, and I'm pleased to see in different parts of the country this same instinct to protect each other, and I think it gives me faith in the country. My faith isn't breaking in the country; it's getting stronger as I see Americans stand up to this oppressive, dishonest, crooked, fascist government and what they're doing to our people.
I go back and forth because to me it was so obvious in the run up to the 24 election.
Yeah, we got it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, what was
definitely got it wrong. Yeah,
they told us exactly. Yeah, they told us exactly what they were going to do.
They did, but now we see it.
Yeah, but certainly to see a lot of Americans kind of awaken from their slumber and try to quickly acquire the democratic habits of mind, small d.
Yep.
It does give me hope.
Yeah, it turns out people are powerful too. Hey, if this has meant anything to you guys listening, and you've heard this horrible stuff going on, first, there's great reporting. Even when local news is being damaged all over the country, there's great reporting out there. Pay attention to it. The Minnesota Reformer, you can get it online. Get it online. Look at what's happening. Be informed. Because this is what Donald Trump is choosing over health care and over everything else. He wants to change the subject by doing these terrible things to American cities. And here's another thing. Forget the big, beautiful bill, because that isn't an appropriation. ICE is actually only funded through January 31st. So today, call every legislator you can and demand that they refuse to fund ICE, refuse to give it another penny in any continuing resolution or in any appropriation bill. Absolutely. This is something those legislators can do right now. Patrick, I so appreciate your work. I so appreciate the people in Minnesota who are not alone. I know it feels like the country has forgotten you and you're alone when you have a megaphone of all of organized Washington lying about what's going on there, lying about the people there, and continuing to do this horribly oppressive behavior. But we were through it here. You aren't alone. The whole country is in shock and would love to help if they knew how. How can people help?
There's certainly you can help nonprofit media like the Reformer. But there's also, if you just do some Googling, there's a group called Isaiah that is a ecumenical progressive group and that does a lot of good work. They're organized a general strike a week from today. And so there's there's lots of mutual aid out there for helping folks, because some people are a lot of people are sheltering at home. And so we need to try to get them their food and in some cases, prescriptions. So certainly do what you can. But I'd also encourage people to start getting organized locally.
Yep. Well, thank you for your time today. I know you got tons to do there, so I really appreciate it. Stay safe.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Welcome back to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
Joe and I, we do this thing every week where we don't usually hold back, Joe. Yeah, I mean, you don't hold back anyway. So, here we are. Before we came on, as you're coming in, Joe and I were talking about this. I don't think we have a partisan problem anymore. I mean, the president and his party, let's see, they're blowing up NATO. They're killing Americans on our streets. They're throwing tear gas canisters into cars with children. They're quashing any investigation into what they do. They're musing about augmenting the thugs they've sent in our cities with the U.S. Army by virtue of the Insurrection Act. The president's talking about canceling midterm elections. I could go on, but in what sense is any of this partisan? This isn't about Democrats and Republicans. This is about, MAGA versus American democracy.
I'd say, and by the way, Edwin, it's always good to be with you. By the way, everybody who's joining us, thank you. Press those red hearts. Give us some red hearts. That does something. I don't know what. Thank you for joining us this Thursday.
Yeah, and today those red hearts are for Minneapolis and St. Paul. Let's just hear it for Minneapolis and St. Paul. I know you did this right now. Chicago when they were here, but God bless them.
It's Edwin. It's the beauty of Trump. He's so bad and so lawless and so corrupt that he does bad, horrible, corrupt, lawless things in our faces. And because it's right there, we have to decide in real time, oh, my God, is this the kind of country we want to be? And that's what's happening in Minneapolis right now. Yep. And to your point, I think the broader point you want to make, I'm a new Democrat, 7 months old. No. The party's playing catch up. Leading the resistance are grassroots voters
all over the country. Yeah.
And that's going to continue to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, anybody who is waiting for Chuck Schumer to save the democracy is a fool. And I don't mean to be critical of Chuck. But he's not. That's not where the fight is anymore. But the Democrats will put up good candidates, and that's all they have to do. The rest of us have to organize. Have to get out the vote, have to do all those things, because, I mean, this is really about whether we'll ever have politics again.
Edwin, you and I are of an age where we grew up, where we had two parties. They had disagreements on issues, but as people say, they both played within the 40-yard lines.
Yep.
Those days are done, right? And now we have one of our two parties, which is full-on authoritarian and full-on anti-democracy and the rule of law.
Yeah, and corrupt is all get out.
Yeah, and Chuck Schumer and Democrats of that ilk, they're not used to this. They'll never understand it.
Right, and the good news now is we don't need them to. This isn't, look, and anybody who thinks that it's up to a political party, any political party, any one of our two political parties, to save American democracy when it's threatened is missing this moment, and is also ceding their own responsibility as citizens. This isn't about, the Democrats are going to come save us. We got to save ourselves. It's always been that way, and that's where we are.
And the note of hope is that, you and I've said this before, in every special election so far since this bastard was sworn in, Democratic turnout has been through the roof. Right now, resistors, and that's what we all are, we will crawl bare naked across broken glass for miles to vote. That's going to continue no matter what the Democratic Party does or says.
It's exactly right. And friendly amendment to what you just said. You said Democratic turnout was through the roof. I think Americans turn out because they don't see it as a partisan issue. They see it as, I'm defending democracy. I got one choice.
So
there are a lot of Republicans voting for these Democrats.
I did a Substack last night, and I apologized again for being wrong, because after the 2024 election, I went on the TV circuit and I said, Democrats, the days of you just winning by saying Trump is bad, those days are over. And I'm wrong, because right now, for the next 10 months, all Democrats have to say is Trump is bad, and just point to what he's doing, point to ICE, point to every utterly horrible thing he's doing, and Democrats will take back the House without having to say this is what we are, and maybe take back the Senate. That changes in 28. Democrats will have to say who they are in 28. But right now, because Trump is so bad, Edwin. So dangerous that all Democrats have to do once again is say, look at what he's doing.
Democratic candidates. Yeah, and it's really
Democratic candidates.
Yeah, and it's not really in our DNA just to do that, because we will talk about how we want to govern and the country we want to have. But I agree with you. The main message is this ain't it. This is not why.
Right, and it's like this dilemma we've always been in, Edwin. You and I want to talk about policy and have a debate about policy.
Yep.
But our house is burning down right now, so vote for someone who will put out that fire. That's where we are again this year.
That's right, and that is it. And we have to protect those elections from a president who wants to cancel them and says he wants to cancel them and use the U.S. Army to seize the ballot box. It's just insane. Hey, I want to ask you a policy question.
Go ahead.
This is a little insider, guys, but it's worth it. ICE is only funded to January 31st in the current, right? They got to pass a new CR this is an opportunity to put a lot of strings on that, or even cut their funding. I mean, there is no justification for how they're behaving in our cities. None, zero. There wasn't any in Chicago. It's appalling what crimes they're committing in Minneapolis, but they run out of money at the end of January. Congress has to re-up that money. Now, this is where Democrats do matter. And what was your advice to them here?
So, I love the question, and I said it this morning, and I'm going to get to your question.
Yep.
If I were a Democratic governor right now of a state in which these thugs are out on the streets brutalizing my constituents, I would call up the National Guard immediately.
Okay, I'll talk about that, too, with you.
Okay, that's number one.
Yep.
If I were back in Congress right now, there is no way I fund one dime of this government until those masked thugs are off the streets. End of story.
End of story. Right. Now, we have to be smart about that.
They won't do that. They won't do that.
Shutting down government, that doesn't stop them, because they'll be declared essential and they'll have to work whether they get paid or not. So we have to actually pass a funding bill that cuts their funding. I can't do this by shutting down.
And I don't think the Democrats in Congress will have the stomach to do either. I'm hearing, and Edwin, we ought to get into this. This is interesting. I'm hearing Cory Booker and so many other Democrats talk about how we need to reform ICE. Americans don't know the history of ICE. They haven't been around that long.
Yep.
I'm no radical, and this is not defund the police. I think ICE needs to be abolished. I don't think this.
I do too. It's been, even if it was good over for a while, they've recruited into it such poison. It needs to be started. We need a different solution, right?
Completely.
That may be true for Department of Homeland Security all the way through. I don't know.
Completely, Edwin. And again, this is not like defund the police is a stupid thing to say because law enforcement is a state and local enterprise.
By the way, and a lot better trained than these guys.
Yeah. Abolishing ICE politically is not like saying defund the police.
Yeah.
We've only had ICE around for 20 some years. They have completely exceeded and abused their mission, which at the beginning was problematic to begin with. Yeah.
Okay,
But Edwin, Democrats will not do what you and I just said.
Hang on, because as you know, I locate Democrats somewhere other than D.C. So for those of you who are listening, who are, willing to pretend to be Democrats for a while, and please do, call the representatives. Call every representative you have and tell them not one penny for these ICE thugs. Not one. Not one. And you know what, Joe? If we put enough pressure on them, you'd be surprised what they'll do.
I would be surprised. I would.
It's your old party that's immune to public pressure because they don't actually get elected that way. They get elected by the money and the map makers.
Well, but by the way, that's what my new party is up against because you're right. My former party is not held back by anything right now. Yeah. Donald Trump is unchained. How do you fight that? You can say, kumbaya, let's hold hands and no king's marches till the cows come home. But eventually you have to do more than just that.
Well, right. So let's defund ICE. Now, I want to talk to you about the perils of calling out a National Guard. Because if you do call out a National Guard, you are setting up a shooting fight. You really are. And that then it's easier to do the Insurrection Act. And and by the way, the president can nationalize the National Guard. And so you got some.
Though, you're right. Though the courts have already ruled on that against him, and I wouldn't mind forcing that court ruling again. But continue.
Yeah, but none of these National Guards. I don't want a shooting war, and I certainly don't want the Insurrection Act and the U.S. military responding to state National Guards. That's an escalation that I really hope we don't get to.
So, I love you. You're my brother. But Democrats have to look, Edwin, we know what Trump's plan is. Everybody knows it. Incite violence and unrest, then invoke the Insurrection Act, then declare martial law, then suspend the midterms. That's his plan, okay? Democrats have to try to peacefully overwhelm that plan.
Correct.
But, Edwin, I would also say Democrats need to be prepared to walk up to that line and to fight fire with fire because the other side would go over that line. And the other side, I've told you this before, my political party has never believed Democrats will fight to the death to win something.
Well,
and
I hear you. I do. Here's what I'm seeing. People, Democrats and others, have proven that they are willing, not eager, but willing to die for this. They are willing to stand up and go out there, and ICE says, you will not be warned again. Do you know what happened to the last person who did this? And they still show up. And they're still getting shot at. Right? And they're going to do it, and they're going to do it, and they're going to do it, and I'm going to do it, and then you're going to do it. And we're not doing it with rifles, but we are showing up, and we are showing up when they say, we'll shoot you if you show up. We still show up.
I think this is a great conversation, Edwin. I think it would be so refreshing for America to see. I'm so disappointed in Tim Walz. For America to see a Democratic governor take that step and say, no, I'm the governor of this state. My constituents and residents are being abused and denied due process on my streets. I am going to call up my National Guard to simply protect Minnesotans.
Well,
I think it would be amazing for America to see that.
I think it's entirely dangerous, and I hated it when Greg Abbott did it when Biden was president and said the U.S. has no business being near a crossing of the Rio Grande. My National Guard is going to be standing here, and we will not let the U.S. in here. I thought it was appalling then. But you're saying we should do the same thing, and maybe politically you're right.
Republican governors will take that step.
They did.
They did. Democratic governors, this is, you and I have talked about it. What's happening with ICE right now, Edwin, this is literally fascism being played out.
I agree.
If you can't exercise all your powers as a governor to try to lawfully protect, then what are you there for?
Yeah.
I'm done talking. I'm done with Tim Walz going on TV and saying this is bad. We might quit with the talking. Do something. That's all. I'm not afraid of getting to that confrontation because I believe America needs to get there.
Well, I don't want to get to the Insurrection Act and American troops. They're pretty amazing, our troops, and I'd hate to see them fight against us.
So play that out, and maybe you know this more than I do. Trump invokes the Insurrection Act, which he has no cause to invoke. Immediately, that'll get taken to the courts, and that will get dealt with almost immediately, because that's a real big deal. That will play out in the legal system, in the courts, immediately.
How much faith do you have in the Supreme Court that believes in it? I mean, look, part of the reason we're in this problem, Joe, is that your former party and the Supreme Court, with their unitary executive stuff, said the entire executive branch is Donald Trump, period. So that one man now has all that power. And then the Supreme Court said, you're immune from prosecution. And Donald Trump said, with all that power, I'm going to use the pardon power to say everybody who commits a crime on my behalf is also immune. So the Supreme Court has basically granted immunity now to every criminal who is fighting for Donald Trump.
And oh, by the way, Donald Trump and Stephen Miller have granted immunity to every masked thug out there on the streets.
That's exactly.
I hear you.
I mean, I think they should. That shooter in Minnesota should have been arrested by the police, put in jail
on the spot.
Not let walk off and pretend he was hit by a car, but arrested and put in jail, and then we could have said, you know what, you're being tried for murder. We'll worry about it that way.
The lower courts have done a really decent job catching up and ruling against what he's doing. Yes. I agree with you about the Supreme Court. And maybe I'm naive, Edwin, but I do think in certain areas the Supreme Court is not going to give on this guy. When it comes to 14th Amendment, when it comes to birthright citizenship, not going to rule with Trump. I think when it comes to tariffs, not going to rule with Trump.
I agree with you. But where they always rule with Trump is in executive power. I think they're not willing to say, they're not willing to pretend there is no Constitution. They are willing to say he has unlimited executive power, but they're not willing to say he has more than that. And that's so the tariff issue, if they would have to say, well, he has Congress's power too. And I think they'll draw the line there. And the 14th Amendment is just so clear. I mean, there's no possible reading around that language. And there's plenty of case law about it.
You are a more decent person than I am. I was going to give you another compliment. I guess what I'm saying is our democracy and the rule of law are teetering right now. One side, the side that would attack democracy and the rule of law, is fully prepared to do whatever they have to do. If the other side is not prepared to do everything they have to do to defend democracy and the rule of law, and I know it's a scary proposition, then I don't know what.
No, I want to be prepared to do absolutely everything. But that doesn't mean I think everything that we could do is strategically the right thing to do. So it's worth talking about. And, fighting fire with fire, literally, having a civil war is not a battle I want to start. I don't want to be the one who fires on Fort Sumter. But if they bring it, as Lincoln said, we'll take it. If they bring the war, if the war comes, it comes, and we'll have it out. But they're going to be the ones who fire.
Right. In the context here, Edwin, is, and I'm tired of anybody in my party, my new party, who doesn't believe that Trump is capable of trying to screw with or suspend the midterms. I mean, if you don't understand that yet, you're helpless. That's the overall context here.
Rudy, he will.
He will try, and we know he's going to mess with them. He will try to suspend them because on an equal playing field, Edwin, this is going to be a blue tsunami. Again, a slaughter. And he knows that. They know that.
Joe, I mean, is it possible that he's also he's so drunk on power that they're not going to pay attention like they should? They're going to make mistakes. I mean, he is thinking, I'm the emperor of the Americas. I'm busy trying to market oil that I took from Venezuela. I am going to destroy NATO and can conquer a piece of a NATO country and do all of that at the same time. The world has a way of, I'm going to attack Iran. Oh, wait, I can't attack Iran because my aircraft carriers are in the Caribbean. Let's move some away from China. Oh, wait, what about Taiwan? I mean, he's things up so terribly all over the world that maybe, just maybe, they're stretched a little too thin.
Agreed. But again, I think that Trump believes, look, he tried to overthrow an American election. He was never held accountable for that. In fact, we put him back in power. I think the minute we did that, Donald Trump said,
I can do whatever
I want. And for the past year, that's what he's been doing. And in his defense, he was taught and trained to believe that by Republicans. And so that's where he is right now. He literally believes, you said drunk on power, there's a lot of that. He can do whatever. Edwin, he invaded a sovereign nation to steal their oil. And that happened 2 weeks ago? We don't even talk about it anymore.
Yes, he signed a law that said, I'm going to give all the Epstein files over. He signed the law. He's not doing that. No, he is who he is. I don't care who he is anymore. I care who we are, because he is a known quantity. He wants to rule forever. He wants to get rid of any of our freedoms that he doesn't personally grant. He doesn't believe that any freedom comes from anything other than his will, right? That's not America. So are we. Are we going to be Americans and stand up?
Yes, and you and I have to be responsible and lead with everyone who's listening to us. We know what Trump's plan is. We have to peacefully overwhelm that plan. That's not the end of my sentence, but we have to be prepared to do whatever we have to do to defend democracy and the rule of law. I'm keeping that vague purposely.
You know what? And I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. By the way, and it starts with, because there's a limit to what Democrats can do. This is not only a Democrat fight. But what they can do, and what we all have to push them to do, is make sure not a penny goes to ICE. Right?
Well,
right now,
Edwin, that's something they can do.
They can do it.
Yeah. They can do that. And any Democratic governor with ICE in their state has the power to call up the National Guard. There are things Democrats can do.
Well, we should do them. I mean, we need to be forceful in protecting our people. We need to be forceful in making sure. I mean, look, the laws that got passed that allow, we made a hash of immigration for ages. We just did. And, we did. And missed opportunity after opportunity in Congress to pass laws that would clean it up. But the cleanup that is required is not what's on offer by this asshole. And his idea that he is going to somehow strip citizenship from 50 million people so that he can get rid of 50 million people. That's like the biggest. I don't know what that is. That's
you know what it is, Edwin? Because I hear this from them every day. That's the most powerful animating force in my former party. White Christian nationalism. Trump's an idiot. Trump's not aware of any of this stuff. The people around Trump, Stephen Miller, J.D. Vance, and others, they are part of this. It's no longer a wing of my former party.
It is.
My party is driven by the thought that the belief that this should be a white Christian country again. We have the opportunity to make it so. And for those of you listening to me who don't believe me, this is what they tell me every day.
Yeah, well, they murdered a white Christian on the streets of Minnesota, and around her And in that protest were plenty of white Christian ministers who are saying, you know what, you don't read the Bible the way we do. We read it as love your neighbor. We read it as do unto others as you would have to do unto you. And if this strand that is the new strand of Christianity on the right thinks, no, that's not what it says. It says Donald Trump was given to us by God in order to lead a crusade. You know what? The Crusades didn't work out so well for Christianity either. I mean, seriously? And they certainly didn't work out well for Jews. Let me just be.
No, exactly. Edwin, I know we've talked about this, and I think generally, maybe you agree with me. Democrats, my new party, dropped the ball on immigration. Joe Biden, Kamala, the first 3 years, man, they were flooding in. And that issue, to a large degree, got Trump elected. Trump has taken that issue to an ugly, dark, cruel, extreme, un-American place. The pendulum has swung so far to the right now that, again, on an equal, fair playing field, there's going to be a backlash against what Trump is doing.
Yeah. By the way, he got elected on that, and he got elected on, remember he had that press conference with the rotting meat? He said, I'm going to lower the price of groceries. And I was in the grocery store again today. Again, the price of groceries is not down. It's up. And his economic, I mean, look, there is not a thing he can be proud of having accomplished. I mean, he's like wrecked our alliances, wrecked a beautiful economy that he inherited. He's set Americans against each other. I mean, like what? I guess he's made some of his friends very rich. That I guess he's done. And he's certainly, he made his son a big defense contractor.
He's which goes back to why I think he's just an idiot. He's drunk on power. All he cares about is himself. But you're right. He's been an utter disaster, Edwin, which will give Democrats the House.
I agree.
Period. Maybe the Senate, though. That's a real tough stretch.
That's a real tough stretch. But, maybe we can get some of these Republican senators that he now hates to caucus with Democrats for a while at least. That's, I think it's hard, but some of them, Susan Collins isn't going to run again, probably. She could just, caucus with the Democrats for 10 minutes.
Tell me if you agree with me. I don't believe that if this guy sends troops into Greenland to try to take over Greenland, I don't think my former Republican colleagues will do much or say much. Do you disagree?
Not enough to break a filibuster, for sure.
Okay.
They'll figure out who needs to say something, what three can say something, No, they won't. They are all in with this fascist. And that is just disgraceful, but that's where they are, as you've said that. Hey, yeah. I have a framing. I wonder how you think about this. I want to tell people, you know what? 14 million people are about to lose their health care. Why? Because Donald Trump wanted the money to pay for more ICE agents.
Oh my God, Edwin. And again, that goes to your keeping the government open at the end of this month argument. It is, I'm going to botch the language. ICE now is the largest domestically funded law agency in the history of this country.
It's bigger than most of the military in most other countries in the world now.
They don't have, they're hiring people at a clip like this is, you're right. And all the money in that big, beautiful, bad bill that went to ICE.
But the thing about that, remember, for everybody who's listening, the big bill, they put a lot of money into ICE, but that's not how appropriations actually work, right? No. So they're out of money at the end of January, and do not let them have any more. There should not be a single Democrat who votes to give them a penny, not a penny. And right now, we have to bring the heat. Donald Trump is the villain here, but make every Democrat as well as every Republican in that House feel the anger and tell them this is not okay. They do not get to come into our cities. And today they tear gassed a car full of kids. The kids are all in the hospital. This is completely out of control.
But the good thing, it's 86%. Yesterday, I saw the poll. Yep. 86% of the American people have seen the ICE videos. That's like unprecedented.
Yeah.
These videos have seeped through to almost every American.
Yeah, nobody thinks this is okay. Nobody thinks this is okay.
Well,
Except
let me
for
correct you.
People in the
Except-
government who are pushing it.
And except for his base, because they bombard me, Edwin, every day, and his base generally loves what ICE is doing.
His base is getting even more radical, but it's also getting a little smaller. It's getting harder and smaller. Those numbers are going down, but they will go. They'll pull the trigger for them for sure. And we need to make sure there are consequences this time. I mean, Ashley Babbitt, who died trying to destroy American democracy, is not a martyr, right? And these guys want to make her a martyr. And Renee Good, who was murdered just sitting in her car at a protest, whose last words were, "I'm not mad at you," they're trying to make her a villain. The shame is you can't get out of it. Anybody who's on that defends that is painted forever with this.
And our jobs, your job, my job, everybody who's listening to us, is to spend the next 10 to 11 months putting this word out. Put the videos out once a week. Show everybody you know what's going on. Keep people informed.
Do it. But today, reach out to the Congress and tell them not a penny for ICE. Joe, as always.
That's a perfect thing. That's the best way to say it. Yep. Call your member, not a penny for ICE.
Not a penny for ICE.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Welcome back to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody, I'm taking your calls. Hey, look, I apologize for running over. That was former Congressman Joe Walsh, and we sometimes get into it together. Look, I have 5 or 6 of you on the waiting for call to talk, and I want to get right to your calls, but 2, maybe 2.5 minutes each, so we can get through, starting with Jim.
Hi, Edwin. Real fast. Thank God that Nixon wasn't president in 1872 when Billy Halstead, the father of American surgery, used cocaine and morphine to great advantages in the operating room. Also, when he brought in a bowl to wash his hands, the attending surgeon was just dropping the floor and said, we don't believe in germs. But anyway, he had a tremendous success rate, and he used it to great advantage. The other thing, we got football coming up, and he was the captain of the Yale football team. They won a national championship that year, and that's the first year they decided 11 guys on each side. From then on, it was 11 guys on each side. Up until that point, I think it was, I can only take a guess, it was right maybe 1875, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But he was the captain of the team, and all I can say is that with my meager finances, I don't want my accountant on Ritalin when he's cutting my waste, fraud, and abuse. Anyway, Edwin.
Good point.
Anyway, Edwin.
Thank you, Jim.
Great week.
Thank you. Yep. Dave.
Hey, Edwin, I'm going to read you something, a note I had from August of last year, August 6th. A new Hegseth leak reveals secret plan for years of troops on U.S. streets to help carry out Trump's immigration policies, according to a leaked memo written by Hegseth's brother, Phil, who works inside the Pentagon as a liaison to the Department of Homeland Security and as a senior advisor to the Department Defense Secretary. In this latest document obtained by the New Republic, details plans for how the Trump administration could use the military to assist the domestic law enforcement as part of its mass deportation agenda for years to come. Sound familiar?
Yeah, you surprised? No. Look, everything you can think that they're going to try and do, they're going to try and do. We just have to be tougher.
He always telegraphs what he's going to do.
Yep.
You know, and so, but I just thought you might find that interesting. And then, like,
I do.
In Minnesota last night, they had the other people. They were dressed in black this time, like Hitler's SS were black, and the SA were in brown. In other words, the other guys during the daytime were in OD green. So, like the SA and the SS. So anyway, let's get off so the others can get their say. But I thought you'd find that August.
I do.
All right.
I do indeed. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Nancy.
Hi, Edwin. How are you?
Thank you. Good.
Okay. Thank you, first of all, for the show today. Your rant in the beginning, especially Laura Jadid, she finally is a person who has said what I've been saying for the 50 years that I've been voting. And what else are we going to do? You know, you're saying, oh, no, we got to, you know, MLK and Gandhi. Yeah, look what happened to them.
Okay. But
no,
we have to do everything we can do. The first step, the first test is to stop Congress from funding ICE, to tell them absolutely not a penny when this money runs out on January 31st. So if there's anybody, you know, call your congressman, and in fact, call other congressmen, but just say, no, not a damn penny. And, you know, that's the test. And after that, we're going to, I mean, somebody is going to test this in, you know, the National Guard and the Insurrection Act. It's going to be awful, Nancy. But what people are doing. Yep.
I'm sorry,
I'm not,
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I'm no, you know, I'm like, you can be hard and a man of peace too. But yep, I hear you.
No,
You're not alone.
Understand. Here's the problem: too little, too late. They should have been saying all this stuff years ago. And I'm not talking about when felons showed up. I'm talking about for the last 50, 60, 70 years. And I'm saying that this country has never been a democracy because we have an undemocratic two-party system that we follow. And now I'm being told that it's in the Constitution. We couldn't change it if we want to. And if we want to,
it's hard. We could. We could.
And
it's hard, but we could.
That's exactly right. And here's a question I want to ask you. And by the way, I agree with Joe Walsh, and that's a surprise because he's not one of my. Anyway, but Jadid is my new favorite hero, and believe me, I don't have many of those.
Yeah, good.
She was good. Right. She was very good. She says exactly what. And anyway, here's the thing. You want to say that, okay, yes, I agree with you. We have to take certain steps. But if we would have been following the law in a democratic system in the first place, we would have never ended up here.
No, the man would have been in jail. The man would have been in jail.
We thought, yes, exactly.
And all those insurrectionists would still be in jail. They wouldn't have been pardoned.
Please stop saying, and I'm not directing this to you, I'm saying to everybody, please stop saying, well, this is what the people, you know, voted for, and he was elected. He was never legitimately elected. Nobody will ever convince me that he got in legitimately in 2016 or in 2024.
Nancy, that's what
it's a whole group of them now, and Democrats don't fight that. You tell me, what are we supposed to do?
I'm going to leave it there because I got a lot of people to get going to. I want to leave it with your last comment that this man who says he's won 10 elections that he hasn't won, I want your last comment to be he's never actually won an election. I love that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Dan, you're next.
Hi, Edwin. How are you today, sir?
Good. In a fighting mood.
Yes, I understand that. I've listened to the entire show today, as I always do every Saturday, and I just want to tell you, first off, this is the best one I've ever heard.
Wow.
I have to tell you that. I have to tell you that, Joe Walsh, and especially in the beginning with the lady, I can't remember her name. Yes. This is where we're at, Edwin. You and I have talked a few times over the last few months. I listen to you every week, and I love your optimism. And I wish to Christ we had a lot more of it anymore. But you gotta realize this is ending, and we have to do something. We have to do something, just like she said, just like Joe Walsh said. This is coming to the inflection point. We're looking at the abyss.
We're there.
Something we have to do. Yes, we are.
I agree.
Yes, we are, sir.
But I don't want to go back the way it was. I want to go forward to a better. I mean, I've thought this a long time. You know, we have the chance. And I wrote about this, I want to say, in an article that appeared in the Tribune, I want to say 4 years ago. We have the chance to do what we have never done in America, to create a truly multiracial, multi-faith society where everybody gets a fair shake, and we have not ever done that. But we came close, and as we came close, the right wing said, no way, we are never going to let that happen. We are going to turn the country over to the corporations and the billionaires because we do not want that to happen. And I don't want to go back to the way it was.
We have to mobilize. We have to take up arms. That's just where we're at. Joe Walsh said it. So did your...
Yep, Laura Jadid. Yep, it's a fair point. But let me just say, I am in awe of the citizens of Minneapolis and St. Paul as I was of my friends in Chicago. You know, what they are doing is as powerful as guns. And they have been willing, my God, they have been willing to die for our democracy. And some have. And that is just, that is so powerful. And if, and we haven't been willing to kill for it, we've been willing to die for it. But if it comes to it and they send in, and they make it worse, there's no question we'll get there. But I want to be really smart about how we win. Yep. Anyway, thank you, Dan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I got a couple more to grab, but thank you.
Keep up the fight. All right.
Thank you. All right, Roosevelt.
Double E, thank you for taking my call. Long time no talk.
Well, here we are.
So, I want to point the finger at Florida. You've heard about the lowering the age from 21 to 18 that the House passed in the state of Florida for carrying a gun. So one of the things that's happening in Florida is they're going to start killing each other. And I want to mention other crazy laws that they passed. Remember the Stand Your Ground? Remember what happened to that young man with the hoodie? That's number 2, and along the same subject.
Trayvon Martin was his name.
Trayvon Martin. Also, have you heard about the scandal of Casey DeSantis, $10 million that they siphoned from a charity down there in Florida? So
is this the one that involved the quarterback?
No.
What's his name? Oh my God!
No, you're talking about Brett Favre.
Brett Favre, right?
Yeah, well, that's another one. I'm glad you both pointed that out. I forgot all about that. No, this one is directed at the First Lady of Florida, Casey DeSantis. So they want to push the fact that she might be running for governor. However, they siphoned $10 million. It's a big scandal, but we don't know of it because always it's Chicago, the one that's corrupt. It's Cook County. However, none of this is really it doesn't pick up on the media. There's big things that are happening in Florida, negative to the people that live in Florida. Not to mention the fact that in the past elections, they threw out all those votes of minorities and people that were in jail, to be specific, African Americans. Remember that one?
Yeah, I do.
Remember that one?
Hey, Roosevelt, I want to say one thing in defense of Chicago and Cook County and the state of Illinois. And it's something the people of Florida and Texas and all those people who are pointing the finger up here should know. Yeah, we've had crooked politicians, but unlike you, we throw them in jail. We kick them out of office. That's why so many of our corrupt guys are in jail, are gone, and we know about them. We didn't sweep it under the rug. We arrested them, we tried them, we convicted them, we put them in jail until Donald Trump pardons them.
And
so go ahead, Florida, do it.
Yeah, and Double E, I'm glad you mentioned that. But what you didn't mention is the fact that we're a blue state. We're a democratic state. We've seen our own party corruption, and we hold them to, these are your words, we hold them to the fact that our party does not accept. There's the other guy. You just made me think of the other guy in New Jersey. By the way, he threw his wife under the bus. What's his name?
Menendez.
So I'm glad you mentioned that. But like I said, I'm going to repeat it. What you didn't mention is the fact that we hold our own party and to the democracy and the laws and the Constitution and the laws in the state of Illinois. That doesn't happen in Florida. They're more corrupt than. So when they say that we're the ones that are corrupt, Just look at all the things that are happening down there in Florida. And that's going to happen again, because if you remember correctly, they did it once 25, 26 years ago with the Bushes when Jeb Bush was the governor of Florida. They fixed it. They fixed the election. So that's another important thing. I just wanted to bring that up, because the finger is always pointed towards Chicago, the state of Illinois, the governors that we had here, but we hold them to our laws.
Account.
And we're the first. Yeah, that's the word. Hold them an account. But just wanted to mention that. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of funny business that's going on, especially the media that doesn't ventilate these things that are going on down south in these corrupt states, like you mentioned, Texas, like Florida, like Georgia. There's another one. That governor should not be there right now. That governor stole the election from the Democratic candidate. What's her name? Can't think of her name. Anyway, but thank you, Double E. Appreciate your time.
Are you gonna take a moment to not pay attention to Florida or Texas or even Donald Trump and watch the Bears?
Oh, I'm watching the Bears. Double E, after all this stuff. By the way, Double E, I'm glad you mentioned that too. You ought to see on YouTube all the excuses that the Chiefs had that they were, making on the social media of why the Bears don't belong there, why that they're a better team.
Well, they may be a better team, but they lost. I mean, hey, I want to ask you one question about that. If the shoe were on the other, I know all the reporting was the Bears are great. They had this phenomenal comeback. They got this quarterback. He's like the Iceman. He did all these great things. But if the shoe were on the other foot, if this were exactly the opposite, I don't think we would have credited the other quarterback. What we would have said is, we just had the biggest choke, the biggest collapse we've had in years, right? We'd have blamed ourselves. And so I think Green Bay, they just, the pressure got to them and they weren't playing as well in the last half. And I think the Bears are going to have a very tough time with a good team that plays well for 4 quarters. So I hope we're up for it. I do. Because we're a good team, but we don't play well for 4 quarters.
And Double E, 25 points in the 4th quarter. It's amazing. The worst defeat that I can remember. So
yeah, it was a complete collapse in Green Bay's part. All right, thank you, Roosevelt. Steve, you're going to be last and close us out, and you got about a minute and a half to do it.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, you know what? I'm a former Marine. 3 years. I was military, police, and corrections too. Actually, right at the end of Vietnam, and I'm a little about. We just got to stick to the Constitution. And some of the people, I'm sorry, I love all your callers. Some like to simmer in their negativity. I won't name names, but this thing about taking up arms, that's ridiculous. At this point, it's ridiculous. What I'm saying is we got to count on. If we do try to move on Greenland, which I don't think we will be that stupid, but if we do, I think the military won't follow orders. Because I think
attack a NATO country without congressional authority to do it. I agree with you, by the way.
Yes.
And I agree with you.
I think that's the key. That's the key.
I agree with you. Yeah. But let me ask you what Joe Walsh asked me. Will the Republicans in Congress impeach and throw out Donald Trump if he tries to attack a NATO country? Will they do it, or will they stand with him?
I think they'll stand with him because they're cowards.
That's just so disgusting. I agree with you. I agree with you, and that's gonna. I agree with you, Steve, and that's gonna be our last word for the day. Hey, everybody! Thank you so much for joining me again this week. Again, we are not in a Democrat versus Republican world anymore. We are in America versus this MAGA fascist nonsense, this horror show in Minneapolis that they want to make bigger and take to other cities. We've seen a taste of it in Chicago. We are talking about destroying NATO and attacking a NATO ally. The president announced new tariffs on European countries because they don't want to give up part of Europe to him. Not to our country. Congress didn't ask for it. To him. All right, and I'm told that, in fact, Governor Walz just called up the National Guard. We have a lot to talk about. I will be back at it next week, and you can find me on It's the Democracy Stupid during the week. Take care.